Case, what the hell are you doing? We got a show in like 2 minutes.
What am I doing, Chinch? Just got our first sponsor, brother. I can't believe it. RevTown Jeans just sent me these unbelievable jeans, bro. Most comfortable jeans I've ever put on. They almost feel like sweatpants. I was doing squats just to make sure I was correct in my thinking.
Yeah, if you guys are just listening to this, Sean was basically just bouncing around his room, but he's wearing jeans, which, by the way, my last name's Chinch, Sean. I'll take the part of how they're made because they're Italian milled denim. What that means is they're infused with a trademark athletic stretch yarn, so you get premium jeans with an amazing fit and a comfort of your favorite sweatpants, like Sean was just doing. If you go to our YouTube page, you'll see it. RevTown cuts out the middleman. They offer them directly to the consumer for a ridiculous price, Sean.
Dude, I tell you what, Chinch, you got to get a pair of these, bro. The most comfortable jeans you will ever put on, no doubt about it. Go to RevTownUSA.com and order yourself some jeans, Chinch, because you're going to absolutely love them.
Let's do it.
Let's get this party started, Chinch. We got a show to do, brother.
Yeah.
Roll the animation.
Hall of Fame broadcaster Marty Brenneman here, and he's the best storyteller in the game, and it's time to sit back, relax, and have some laughs. Welcome to the mayor's office, and here's your host, Sean Casey.
Wow, Sean. Big time, bro. What was that? Who was that?
Hey, when you got Marty Brenneman bringing your show in, you know you've made it, okay?
Yeah. Not only
But I'll
that.
tell you what, Chinch, what's so funny, man, is, you know, Marty said the best storyteller. I think the guy we have on today might be the best storyteller in baseball history. So, you know, I believe me, I spent a lot of time with this guy. Yeah. I want to go into it before we bring him in. I want to go into some numbers that are like, when I knew he was coming on, I was like, my head is spinning. But one of the things is this guy's one of the most humble guys ever. So he's not going to say it. So I got to say it because I know he won't say it. So let's start right here. Okay. 1,879 regular season games, played 15 years in the big leagues, 293 career average with 422 doubles. That's a ton of doubles. I'll tell you that. I hit 302, and I'm like, I hit 320 doubles. I was like, yeah, that's a lot. Then I just saw Berkey. I'm like, 422 doubles, 366 bombs, over 1,200 ribbies, a 943 OPS, elite OPS. Won the World Series, went to the World Series with the Astros in 2005. And we'll talk about the World Series in 2011, where he came up with one of the biggest hits probably in World Series in Cardinal history. 52 postseason games. He had 317 with 9 bombs, 41 ribbies, and over 1,000 OPS in 11 World Series games. Pretty good stuff. In the 2000s, Lance Berkman ranked in the top 5 in the National League in multiple categories, including second in RBIs, third in total bases, walks, doubles, and runs, fourth in homers, on base percentage, and OPS, sixth in slugging. There's so many things here, Berkey. Like this list is almost ridiculous, but I just want to I'm going to bring it in, and we're just going to keep talking about how awesome you are as a human being and as a player. So, my good friend Lance Berkman, thanks for joining us.
Cheers again.
Round of applause in the mayor's office, bro.
Well, that was quite an introduction. I certainly appreciate it, but yeah, it's kind of embarrassing too.
Why, embarrassing being one of the best players of all time? Yeah, I'm sure that is, brother. Yeah. Jeez. Hey, Berkey, what are you doing nowadays, man? What is Lance Berkman doing? Like, you know, I mean, break it down for us. How's the family, and what's going on in Lance Berkman's life?
Well, pretty much, I'm coaching, and that seems like what I 24/7. I took a job as the head coach at Houston Baptist University here in Houston. It's a Division I program, and you know, just there's a lot that goes into that, fundraising and recruiting, and you know, now we're into our fall schedule, so every day we're playing inter-squad games, and you know, just trying to figure out what we've got and see how we can best organize it so that we have a chance this spring to, you know, to be a pretty good team.
Dude, I'm fascinated by that because I got kids running around. I know you got kids running around too, like doing things, activities, and all that stuff. Like, how did you decide to become a college coach? And like, has that been always a dream of yours to be a college coach?
Yeah, I definitely always thought that was what I would love to do after I got done playing. And then as I got towards the end of my career, I realized, hey, my motivation for coming to the ballpark is really to help the younger players and to, try to pass on the things that I've learned in the game and in life and try to help those guys. And that gave me a great deal of satisfaction. So I knew that I wanted to coach when I got out and coached for 4 years in high school and enjoyed that experience, but was really ready for maybe a little higher level of player, guys I felt like I could help, maybe get ready to play pro ball. Love the college game. It's kind of the highest level that you can go where guys are still 100% playing for the team. Pro ball by necessity, there's a selfish element to it where guys are sort of their own franchise, and they really have to be. It's not an indictment against those guys. It's just the nature of the professional game. But in college, the kids are still playing for the school and for each other, and you can still bunt and you can still do some things that make the game interesting, in my opinion. And so it's a great level. And the other side of that is I love being in a position of influence on these guys as they're at a pivotal time in their life. When you get away from home for the first time and you're sort of making the transition from boyhood to manhood and having an influential figure that can help you navigate some of those waters that at times are difficult. I really get a thrill out of that. So that's a big part of my motivation for wanting to coach.
Is that the main? I'm sorry. Is that the main example of why you think it's good for kids to go to college? Because there's a whole school of professional coaches and baseball people that say, "Don't go to college. It's going to ruin your pro career if you're that good." Like, what do you tell those guys?
Well, I think it just depends on where you go. I mean, there are certainly, I think there are some anecdotal things that you could point to where, and again, you get it because college coach's job is to win, and his salary is based on his winning percentage many times. And so they're not as cautious as they should be with some guys' arms and, things of that nature. But I will say this, if you get with a good college program where, there's a lot of them out there where guys really understand development, you're actually probably further ahead coming out of college than you would be if you went right out of high school. The low minor leagues is a very difficult environment, and you go into college. Let me say this, if I had a son and he was not a first round draft choice, he would be going to college. In the first round, you can make life-changing money nowadays, and so of course, guys that are that good would have to take advantage of that. But for the vast majority of kids, I like the college experience because it's a good buffer before they really get out on their own. And a lot of times that those low minor leagues and going right into pro ball out of high school can eat some kids up. So I think the college level is a great transition period. And it can, if you get in the right program, it can really help you developmentally.
Berkey, I just think you're the perfect guy to be a college coach, a perfect guy to influence young men. And I always think about, if I was a head coach, what would be one of the number one things I would do? And I think about the culture that I'm creating. So for Lance Berkman coming into Houston Baptist, what's the culture that you're looking to create in that clubhouse for those guys, for those young men?
Well, we've tried to come up with a little acronym that I think I would like for it to reflect how we go about our business, baseball-wise especially, and no disrespect to anybody that's ever been in an actual war, because we like to draw those metaphors to war, but it's certainly sports are nothing like actual combat, and I'm not trying to make light of that, but it's something that sounds sort of tough, and it sounds kind of it evokes those emotions that you want from your players, and it's also easy to remember. So our acronym is WAR. And the W in WAR stands for work. So we want guys that are willing to work, that are willing to develop their skills and put in, the extra time that it takes just outside of practice, working on their own to better their craft. The A is aggression. I like guys to play with aggression. And a part of aggression is understanding what has to happen on the field. And so, you got to know what your job is in order to be able to do it in an efficient manner. And so that all goes into aggression, and aggression is also a great antidote for fear that everybody experiences in competition. So we want guys, if they make mistakes, to do it aggressively and not passively. And R is responsibility. And so we want to take responsibility for everything that happens. It's not the umpire's fault. It's not the weather. It's not, any number of factors. You own your own mistakes. And the beauty of what we've got going is that we encourage guys, after you work, play aggressively, you take responsibility for what happens, then you analyze that, and if something needs to be fixed, you go back to work. So it kind of works in a circle, and that's what we're trying to instill in our guys. And there's other things too, like as example today, I call it Gratitude Tuesday, so I want guys to reflect on the things they're thankful for, and just the great thing about the college game is you really can invest in that culture, building that culture, and it's important, and guys buy in, and so it makes it fun, and you're also teaching life lessons through the game, and I tell these guys all the time, it doesn't matter if we're playing baseball or you go out into the real world and get a job, these same principles apply. They'll make you a successful person if you're dedicated to them.
I love that. First off, I'm gonna steal that Gratitude Tuesday. I will say, hey, Lance Berkman does Gratitude Tuesday, so I'm gonna start doing that. But
yeah,
I love gratitude, and I love responsibility. I think those are great, and working hard. The aggressive one I love, because I know for me as a hitter, it was like a calm aggression, right? Like, I got to be ready to hit. Yes, I'm swinging until my eyes tell me no. Bro, we've had some of my favorite conversations about hitting have been with you. And I always admired you as a hitter, just how aggressive you were. You were a switch hitter, which first off is not easy to do, but you were really comparable on both sides. You had a lot of success from both sides of the plate. You had some of the best hands I've ever seen anyone ever have. So you have an opportunity not only with these young men to create that culture. As hitters, when your hitters come in, what are 2 or 3 of the things that you really talk about to these guys that are almost non-negotiables? We got to do this as hitter. What are you teaching your guys when they come in?
Well, the number one thing to me is bat path. I mean, it's having what you and I would consider a level swing. I mean, that's what they used to talk about. And of course, the reason they call it a level swing is because before all the high-speed video, when you watch a guy just swing in real time, the swing looks level. It looks like it's not steeply up or steeply down. And I know in recent days, there's been a lot of emphasis on getting the ball in the air and launch angle and those type things. And unfortunately, if you say that to a major league hitter that has some understanding of how a swing works, they can put loft in their swing or take it away sort of at will. But when you say that to an amateur hitter, many times the first thing they do is collapse the backside and they're swinging straight up to the top of the cage. Yeah. And, they don't have an on-plane swing. So their timing has to be absolutely perfect in order for them to have success. And so, the first thing I talk about with them is the reason we want to have a swing that's level or an on-plane swing, or another way to say it is I want to keep the barrel behind the ball as long as I possibly can. And most fastballs or most pitches, fastballs especially, are coming at a 9 to 11 degree down angle from the pitcher, so our swing needs to be 9 to 11 degrees, maybe up to 15 degrees up, but really that's not much. It's not up, it looks level. So I try to get them to understand, it's barrel behind the ball for a long time that buys the margin of error, because the higher level you go, the better the pitchers are at disrupting your timing. So you have to be able to get hits when you're not perfectly on time. And so, you watch the guys that hit for a high average in the major leagues, every single one of them, has a level swing. You just have to, because you got to be able to get, when I work with minor league guys, I ask them, I said, in the course of 500 plate appearances, how many times are you perfectly on time, where everything works right and, the ball's right where you expect it to be? And it's probably 50, 60 times maybe during the course of the year. Those are your homers, your doubles, the balls that you play hard. And so in order to be successful, you got to come up with like 120 to 130 hits a year. And so you're having to get like 60 or 70 hits when you're not on time. And so either late or early. And so that's why we preach, keeping the barrel behind the ball a long time. So I'm not afraid to tell a guy to swing down on the ball if he has a tendency to be an upswinger, and I'm not afraid to tell a guy to hit a ball in the air if he's a severe downswinger. So we just try to, that to me is the most important thing in the swing is how your barrel is moving into the strike zone and how long you can keep your barrel in the strike zone.
You know, you were talking earlier about, I loved you said we can still bunt. I mean, they don't bunt a lot in the big leagues anymore. They almost feel like you're giving away an out. I think, like, no, you're bunting to get a guy in scoring position. Hitting is hard. It's hard to actually get a guy over and get him in. And I also feel like nowadays there's so much, you know, guys are punching out 200 times. Like, oh, yeah, but he's got a great OPS. He punched out 200 times, but his OPS is still over 800. Now, I don't buy that stuff. So, like, for you with your players, do you have a two-strike approach? And what is your feeling about the strikeout?
Yeah, I mean, strikeouts are not good. I think if you just, you know, despite all of the things that would tell you, well, they're just another out, it's not true, because when you put a ball in play, you put pressure on the defense. And if you look at the teams that are in the Major League playoffs right now, I guarantee you they're at the very top of the league in balls in play. And, you know, you have to put the ball in play to put pressure on the defense to create opportunities for yourself. Because, you know, it makes even more sense to concentrate on that at the big league level, because, you know, many times you're not getting 3 and 4 hits in a row to score a run. You need some help. You need an error. You need, you know, you take advantage of a walk. But you've got to be able to put the ball in play to put pressure on the defense. And so, you know, the bunt makes a lot more sense in amateur baseball because, as you referenced, you know, if you bunt in the big leagues, you're probably out because the defense is really good. But if you bunt in college or in high school, for sure, you know, the ball is just as likely to end up in the right field corner as it is in the first base hit. So it's a way that you can put pressure on the defense. You make those guys have to make plays. I mean, even I was watching the game last night when the Red Sox, you know, they ended up winning the game. They got a man on first base, and, you know, Cora called for a bunt, and it was well executed. And the pitcher, even on a routine play, almost threw the ball into right field. I mean, He made an awkward throw, and, you know, it ended up putting a guy in scoring position, which in a situation like that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on all the defense and on the pitcher. So there's a psychological component to it also that comes into play when, you know, it's much easier to pitch with a guy on first base only than there is with a guy in scoring position. So, and I know all the analytics guys have looked at that stuff, and, you know, I'm sure the numbers bear out, you know, that you may be more likely in some instances to score from first with nobody out than you are from second with one out. But by the same token, you know, I still think in certain situations the bunt is a great play, and you know, we're certainly going to be taking advantage of that.
Yeah, now do me a favor, bro, because when I watch the college games sometimes, like, you know, everyone looks like Tom Brady out there. They're like opening up you know, guys that throws a pitch. Next thing you know, he's looking at this card. He pulls a card on his wrist or out of his back pocket. The center fielder's checking out where he's going to play. I mean, are you going to do that, or are you going to just play regular 150-year-old baseball and, hey, let's go get them, boys?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're going to play with intelligence, but we're not going to, you know, take our science project out onto the field. So we're gonna, you know, and I think part of that, you know, some of the stuff, it's almost like the good baseball players back when we played instinctively did these things that are now being sort of, you know, handed to the modern day player. And the problem with that is they become dependent on it, and they never have to learn the nuances of the game. And so it's like, well, if I'm always depending on a card for my positioning, then I never learn how to pay attention to the game situation, to who's hitting, to who my pitcher is, to what those tendencies are. You never have to think about the game in a sophisticated way. And to me, especially at the college level, that will you know, inhibit their development as good baseball players. So what my goal as a coach is just to make 8 or 9 coaches that I send out there on the field, guys that are aware of situations, that are paying attention to who's hitting and to where they should be and to what the count is and what is likely to happen. And so we're going to try to teach them all of those things. And then, of course, you know, if we look out there and you see somebody grossly out of position, obviously we're going to try to move them into what we consider to be the best defensive formation. But I do think it slows the game down. It's you know, it's kind of like guys pulling a big list out of their back pocket. I mean, just watch the game and understand what's going on, and a lot of that stuff could be eliminated.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, man. Well, brother, I'm excited for you. I know it's a new phase for you in your life. I think, You're going to be awesome as a head coach. I want to see if I can come back and, maybe I could, and if you need DH or something, I could take the field for Houston Baptist.
Got any eligibility? I mean, I'm ready. Sure. You might have to shave that gray goatee you got wearing.
Hey, just for men, bro. A little just
That's
for men.
right.
You never know.
Uh-huh.
Berkey, I want to go back to talk about influences on you. I mean, obviously, we talk about you having now influence on kids being a college coach, but I want to go back to you as a child and back to your relationship, especially with your dad, Larry, and what he brought to you. Like, can you talk about his influence on you as a hitter, as a baseball player, as a man, and what lessons have you brought forward, maybe to your kids?
Man, my dad, he was fundamental in my character development, my development as a hitter, and just he coached me until I think the last year he coached me when I was 12 or 13, but he was great at teaching. Not just the hitting part of the game, but I mean, I remember little things that he always used to say. He's like, look, you can't beat him with your bat, beat him with your legs, or beat him with your glove, or beat him with your arm. Just always be looking for a way to win the game. And he taught the whole game, not just one aspect of it. And one of the things that I think is a detriment to the young players today is, they grow up in the cage and they grow up, in a lab, a pitching lab. And so everybody loves mechanics and it's really, focused on that one aspect of the game, but you lose the ability to really play the game of baseball as a winning baseball player. My dad was really good at instilling that. He came up with what he called the 5 C's of baseball, and it was commitment and courage and concentration and conditioning, those things that go into making a good baseball player. And he would harp on those. And, he's a guy that, he's the one that started me switch hitting. He recognized I was a left-handed thrower and a right-handed hitter. And he was like, man, that's a bad combo. To try to do something to give this guy a little bit of an advantage. So he turned me around and made me hit left-handed from the time I could walk, basically. So, and he threw it out, throwing batting practice to me. So, and just, beyond the baseball stuff, just watching the way he went about his business, just a man of integrity and just a very steady, solid, always did the right thing, always said the right thing, treated my mother well. Just the way that I watched him live his life was hugely impactful on me growing up and continues to be to this day.
So when I go back and look at your story, I think that relationship with your dad is so cool, because I know for me, people said, why do you love baseball? Well, my dad loved baseball, and it was like something we did together, was whether throwing on the side of the house, going to take grounders, or hitting, which is so cool. And I look at your story too, Berkey, because like I said, man, you're one of the greatest hitters this game's ever seen, and I know that I've ever played against. And when you got to high school, though, when you played and you hit well for a nice average, you still hit a few home runs, but come recruiting time, it seemed like a lot of people weren't recruiting you. I know I kind of had the same story. As soon as I hit a ball in the gap, and they'd see me put my arms and start running like this.
They wanted to sign you up to be a speed skater.
They're like, this guy want to be in the Olympics.
No joke. Like, you could give Apollo Ono a run for his money on the ice with that technique. I mean,
well, that's why the scouts didn't like me either. I'm like, bro, did you just see that rocket I hit the left center? They're like, yeah, but you look like you're speed skating in quicksand. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? You know what I mean? So I know the feeling of not really being recruited, and Richmond, I end up, getting to University of Richmond. Thank you, Mark McQueen and Coach Atkins, for coming out to see me play. Because, I sent 30 letters, Berkey, my dad was like, hey, if they're not going to come to you, you go to them. So I end up sending 30 letters to D3, D2, whoever would listen, Fed leagues, you know what I mean? and division and University, my dad at the end was like, send one to University of Richmond. So University of Richmond ended up come see me play. I went 4 for 4, 8 ribbies, and that's how I got a really small scholarship to the University of Richmond. And I look at your story, how you ended up at Rice. It seems similar to my story. Can you talk us through that a little bit about how you ended up getting to Rice?
Yeah, I mean, back in those days, unlike now, there wasn't as much exposure. There wasn't video. There wasn't all the things that, there wasn't the select travel ball where there's teams from all over that come to one location where everybody can see them. So, there's more likelihood of players sort of falling through the cracks, good players. Now it's not as easy to find those late bloomers or those guys that are really going to be good because everybody knows about everybody. So, but back then, a lot of times, like I didn't really put together a great high school season until my senior year, even though I had a decent high school career. I was on the varsity as a freshman, so it wasn't like I was terrible.
Yeah.
But just, it wasn't like I did anything that was eye-popping until my senior year. And, at that time, there was a scout named Randy Taylor who was the cross-checker for the Texas Rangers, and he was responsible for the area that I was in. And he and Coach Graham at Rice were good friends, and so they had a relationship where Randy would say, "Hey, Coach, you need to look at this guy, or I really think this guy's going to be good." And so my story is, and of course I didn't find this out until much later because I just gotten a call from Rice sort of out of the blue, and they asked me to come down and visit campus, and so but what had happened was Randy had seen me play, and he thought, man, this guy's going to be a good hitter. So he called Coach Graham. He said, man, you got to sign this guy. And so Coach Graham, to his credit, and I guess just about trusting the right people, they offered me a scholarship, and he had never seen me play. I mean, the first time he ever saw me play was after I'd already committed to Rice. And so, I wasn't, kind of similar to your story, wasn't getting hardly any looks from anybody. The only other school that I'd gotten some interest from was Memphis, which that was, we played in a tournament in Tennessee between my junior and senior year in high school, and I had a good tournament, so the Memphis coach had reached out to me. But other than that, I really kind of always wanted to go to A&M because my grandfather went there, and loved the Aggies growing up and that kind of thing, but didn't get any attention from them. Texas, nothing from Texas. Then even though I grew up in Austin right there, so it was like, hey, I'm getting an opportunity to go to a place that's sort of an emerging program, and I'm sure glad I did because I wouldn't have wanted to play for anybody else but Coach Graham, one of the great college coaches of all time. So,
bro, when you mentioned Coach Graham, like, I just can't stop laughing because, like, dude, some of the stories you have of Coach Graham are like some of the funniest stories I've ever heard in my life. Can you take us in there, the relationship, maybe a young Lance Berkman when, coming into college? Can you just give us a couple great Coach Graham stories because they are legendary?
Well, Coach Graham, I mean, he was tough. When I talk about my baseball career, I give my dad a lot of credit because he's the one that got me started playing, taught me the game and all that. But Coach Graham's the one that really kind of took me from a raw, mentally more than anything else, kind of a raw, maybe immature kind of guy, and really taught me how to be mentally tough to the level that you have to be to succeed, when you go into pro ball and ultimately at the big league level. So, but his methods were very, let me just say this, if he coached in today's era, he might make it 6 months before he would be canceled. I mean, this guy was like, off the chain when it came to the things he would say. One of the stories that I like to tell to kind of illustrate my freshman year, we were playing Baylor, and, it was one of those games where, down here in Texas, it's so hot and humid, especially later in the season. And we come off the bus, and it's like 1,000 degrees, and we're having to play a doubleheader against Baylor. This is back in the old Southwest Conference days, and I was a freshman, and I normally played left field, but when we had this left-handed pitcher, or he was our first baseman, he was also a left-handed pitcher, so when they would put him into pitch, I would come in to play first. And so we get locked in this battle with Baylor, and back in those days, you played a 7-inning game and then a 9-inning game in the doubleheader. And the 7-inning game took 4 hours, and the final score ended up being 21-18. Straight barn. It was ridiculous. And so the winning play, it was 18-18 heading into the bottom of the 6th inning, and so Baylor's the home team, and they brought in our first baseman to pitch, and so went to first, and the first guy gets on base, so I'm holding the guy on, and they have this left-handed hitter. And he hits an absolute missile. I'm talking about like as hard as you can possibly hit a ground ball. And in my mind, I felt like I did everything I could. I felt like I laid down in front of it. I wanted it to hit me, but somehow it got under my glove and ended up trickling into the outfield. So instead of it being, at least getting one out of it, maybe even a double play, now it's first and third, nobody out. And they go on and they score 3 runs that inning, and we lose 21-18. Yes. So between games, Coach calls us down the right field line, and he started, and of course, in a game like that, there are plenty of guys that need to be yelled at. Mainly the pitchers giving up 18 runs or 21 runs. But I mean, he's like screaming at guys, and so when he was getting one of those modes, you really wanted to kind of get it over with at the front of the lecture, because by the time he got down to he really worked up. So he's and I'm sitting Indian style in the front of this little gathering, and it's 1,000,000,000 degrees. We still have a 9-inning game to play. I mean, it's like, so he's yelling at guys, and I'm thinking, I don't remember exactly what my stat line was that game, but I had 3 or 4 hits and drove in like 5 or 6 runs. I mean, we scored 18 runs. I thought, man, I had a great day. And so wasn't even thinking about the play. So he gets to the end of the deep, and I'm thinking he's about to turn us loose, to get ready to play the next game. And all of a sudden he goes, "And Mr. Berkman." And I was like, oh my gosh, you're talking about the sense of dread just descended. And so I was like, oh man, what's he going to say? Then he gets like psycho calm, like the calm where I would much rather yell, like scary. Yeah. And he goes, "Let me ask you guys a question. How many of you idiots have read Scarlet Letter?" And we're like, what? But it was Rice, so everybody put their hand up like everybody had read the Scarlet Letter. And so he goes, "Well, for those that haven't read it, in the story there's a woman and she commits adultery. And the townspeople get together and they sew a big red letter A on the front of all of her dresses because they want everyone to know that she's an adulteress. Well, Mr. Berkman, I'm going to petition the NCAA and see if they'll let me sew a big red letter C on the front of your jersey because you're nothing but a coward." I'm talking about ballistic. And at this point, like, I have my head down like this. The next thing I know, he's on hands and knees screaming up underneath my, like I'm trying to like shield myself with my cap brim, but he's like laying on the ground screaming up into my face. And anyway, it was, for a freshman, and I was like, man, I had a good game.
Oh my
God. Anyway. That's a fairly typical example of the type of thing that would happen with Coach Graham at Rice.
Oh my God,
that's amazing.
That is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah, Coach is super smart, and this guy's read more books than anybody I know, and so like there was nowhere you could go to be safe from him because he knows everything about everything. So it's just like he's gonna get you.
What about the story? I believe you were playing left field, and garbage came into play. And can you tell us that story about when you were playing outfield?
That was the next year. That was the next year at TCU, and so my freshman year we had a really good team, and we ended up finishing runner-up in the regional. We made the first regional ever in Rice history, but we had 4 guys on that team that ended up playing the big leagues. We had Jose Cruz Jr., Mark Quinn, who played with the Royals, myself, and Matt Anderson, who was our closer. And so we had that year, and our team was really old. Like we had a lot of seniors, juniors, and seniors on the team. So the next year, we kind of had to reload. So we had a lot of young guys, and it was a rocky year. And we got into a stretch of conference play where we lost 8 straight conference games. So like to lose a conference game would put Coach Graham sort of in panic mode. Lose 8 straight. So you can imagine the state of affairs at this point. But our 8th loss, we got swept at Texas 4 games, and then we went into TCU to play, and this is the 4th game, and I'm playing out in the outfield, and it's a tie ball game in the 8th inning, so we're desperate for a win, and the wind was blowing like 40 miles an hour. I mean, it was like a 3-club wind blowing from right field across my face to the left field corner, and so they pinch hit this big lefty, nobody on, nobody out, and he hits this towering, slicing fly ball into left center. So I turned to my left, and I'm like tracking this ball, and all of a sudden the wind caught it with that lefty spin, and it kind of blew it back over my head. So I ran what we call a Magellan route, kind of around the world. now I'm chasing it, and I'm running after it. And the harder I run, it's like the harder the wind's pushing it away from me. And right when I got to thinking, well, I might have a play on this ball, so I go to dive for it. And I didn't realize, but I had run all the way into the corner. And in those days, the foul pole was in play. Like, it was a pole that was physically on the field. So I go, like, sliding into this pole. I missed the ball, of course. And I have this kind of this big collision with this pole, which obviously the pole won. And where gets tangled up in the fence, like rooting around for the ball on hands and knees. Because one of the things my dad taught me when you're a kid is even if you have a bone sticking out, like, you get the ball in first and then worry about it. So now, like, I'm desperately trying to do that, and I'm pretty sure I have a broken leg. And, like, so the wind had pushed all this debris into the corner. And so I'm like, it was like the garbage scene from Star Wars, where I'm like rooting through this garbage, trying to find the ball, and the shortstop is begging me for the ball. He's like, and then it was like the guy that took Happy Gilmore's jacket. He's rounding second, and it's just like this big lumbering guy. This guy's going to get an inside the park homer. So I finally locate the ball, and it's sitting on top of a plastic grocery bag, and that's the reason why I couldn't see it. It's because of white ball, white bag. So I find it. I go down, I pick the ball up, and when I do, I grab part of the bag. So now I've got this streamer, like, blowing in front of my face. I know I can't throw this whole thing together. So I, like, shake the ball, and the bag comes loose. Well, then I go to throw it, and I kid you not, the bag blows around my head, comes right out in front of me, and I threw the ball right into the plastic bag. And the ball goes like 10 feet. I mean, it literally 10 feet. And the look on my shortstop's face was one of just absolute despair and just incredulous. Couldn't believe it. The guy is inside the park homer. Okay, so that ends up being the winning run. And so now, like, I figured out at this point, okay, your leg's not broke. I got myself unhung from the fence. I'm getting to my feet, and I look up, and Coach Graham is on a dead sprint from the third base, the left field line, coming to me. And I'm thinking in my mind, like, he's coming to check on me. I've just had collision. Don't worry about it. And from about 30 feet away, he stops and he goes, "I'm not out here to check on you. You're the worst outfielder I've seen in my entire life." And turns around and sprints back. So I was like, all right, cool.
Oh, my God.
Game over.
Oh, my God. It's legendary, man. Oh, my God. The Coach Graham stories. When Berkey gets going into Coach Graham stories,
amazing.
Like, we were together last year. I was literally crying from some of these stories, man. And, like, for our listeners to hear these stories is absolute gold. Are you going to bring any of that Coach Graham to your kids?
Yeah, no, and I told Coach, I've texted with him and talked to him since I took the job. A lot of the things that Coach, obviously, to me, he's like a baseball genius because what he was able to do at Rice. Rice is such a small school. They haven't ever once squatted anything. And he ended up winning a national championship there in 2003, which is really remarkable. After winning 5 junior college national championships where he was, at San Jacinto Junior College. So a lot of the things that Coach did were great, and they were really good for me. So I'm absolutely going to try to incorporate a lot of the things I like Coach. Now, I probably won't be sprinting out to the outfield to yell at that. Like he's the worst player he's ever seen. Worst recruiting mistake I've made. I mean, he dropped out on me one time. Like, you're the worst recruiting mistake I've ever made.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Oh, what I love, if you're the worst recruiting mistake he's ever made, how about after 3 years at Rice, Berkey hit 385 with 67 homers and 272 ribbies. That's a really good mistake. If Coach Graham recruiting
that's
like
why Coach was so good. Like, I was the worst player, so
Oh my God. Didn't you hit like 6 homers in a day for him once? Seriously,
I did.
Double?
It's funny because that was the day that there was sort of this transformation. So he was all over me my freshman year and then the first part of my sophomore year. But we hit, or we were playing UMass, and I hit 6 homers in a doubleheader. he said, well, I'm glad that you took time out of your comedy routine to actually concentrate and hit 6 homers. But from that point forward, he kind of left me alone. So that was my escape from Coach Graham's wrath.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. So good, Berkey. So after your junior year, obviously you're about to get drafted because you're one of the greatest players that Coach Graham's ever recruited at this point. And you become the 16th pick of the Astros in the first round in the 97 draft. Boy, I looked at there's not many places that you didn't rake, but I look back at your minor league numbers. What was the biggest transition for you from college ball to the minor leagues?
Going from metal to wood was a little bit of a transition because, especially the aluminum bats that we were using back then, it was, you just had to touch it and you had a base hit or maybe even a homer. I mean, the sweet spot was, it was like a watermelon toothpick.
Yeah.
I mean, So coming into pro ball, the first adjustment is just the wood bat and learning how to get a little bit more accurate with the barrel because the sweet spot's not really as big. But it was funny because I was so locked in that year, my junior year, that when I went to pro ball, it kind of carried over. Now I didn't hit 400, but I mean, I think I hit 11 or 12 homers in a short, in half a season with the high A team. And so it was just, I had a ton of confidence going and there was a small adjustment period there, obviously going from metal to wood, but it happened pretty quick. I tell you, to me, the biggest adjustment in my minor league stint was going from A ball to double A. I'll never forget the first game in double A. We opened in Tulsa playing the Drillers, and Todd Van Poppel was pitching. He's throwing 96 to 100. I mean, and he threw me a fastball that I normally would just have felt like I should have murdered. And it was like I had a hole in my bat. I swung good, and I looked at my bat like, what in the world is going on? And then it dawned on me, like, you got to shorten your swing. Like, your swing's too long. And so, like, that moment for me, understanding, hey, this is the speed of this game is different. And so you're going to have to make some adjustments. And so, that was a moment where I felt like I really worked on trying to, because left-handed especially, I was a guy that would dump the barrel a little bit early. Like, it's good to get on plane early, but sometimes I'd be on plane way too early, and I would end up lugging the bat through the zone instead of, like, throwing my hands. And so I felt like at that point I had to make a little bit of an adjustment to, shorten the swing a bit to be competitive for that level. And so that was a moment I remember.
Wow. Well, it is funny. Those kind of moments where, as a hitter, you're like, if I don't make this adjustment, I'm not hitting these elite guys. Like I might hit the guys that are good, but I'm not getting to the big leagues if I don't hit the Todd Van Poppels, if I don't hit the guys that are throwing 96, 98 miles an hour,
Well, and to me, that's like the art of hitting, is understanding what needs to happen to give yourself at least a competitive chance. And so it's like one of the things I get irritated with my guys about is even off the tee, I'll tell them, hey, we'll put a tee ball right down the middle, and I'll say, hit the ball back up the middle. And they'll take like 7 or 8 swings and pull it right into the side net. And I'm like, dude, you're taking the same swing every time. Like, you have to make some kind of an adjustment to be able to do what I'm asking you to do. And so I think having that ability to recognize, okay, here's the problem. Here's the hitting problem. What can I do to give myself a competitive advantage? Just a perfect example. Like I incurred the wrath of Albert Pujols and Mike Matheny with the Cardinals because Mike's first year. I'm sorry. Well, Mike wasn't there yet. It was because Albert left that year. It was Tony and Albert. We were having a hitters meeting in St. Louis, and we were talking about Aroldis Chapman, and I was like, dude, this guy's better than everybody we have on our team. And of course, that's why Albert, I think, took a little exception to it. I said, but if you're going to hit this guy and you go up there with your normal approach, he's going to throw it right by you. Like, you've got to do something to give yourself a chance. And I said, here's what you got to do. If you get him into a 1-0 count, you're going to guess heater, and you're going to start swinging when he shows you his rear end. And then you hope that, he throws it somewhere close to the strike zone. I mean, that was literally the plan. And they're like, oh, no, that's not a good plan. I'm like, I'm telling you, that's how you hit this guy. And so sure enough, we get in the game, and he comes in, and I got a 1-0 count, and he showed me his rear. I started swinging, and I kid you not, I hit a bullet right down the first baseline as a right-handed hitter. But I mean, I thought I was swinging at it as he was letting it go, and it was so hard that I caught it like way back behind me, took it out of the catcher's mitt, and shot it right down the line. But if I hadn't done that, like I'd have been out. I'd have swung right there. So those are the kind of things that you have to. I mean, you have to be able to make those adjustments and understand. Hey, look, I'm overmatched right here, and I need to do something to give myself a chance.
Yeah, did you go into the dugout and say, "Hey, check me out, Albert"? I know I'm
no. Well, I'm one of those guys that's kind of like, okay, I just demonstrated it. No need to say anything else.
Nice.
I love it, dude. You talked about T drills, and I love this too because when I work with some of my sons' teams, I'll flip to the kids or we'll do T work, and I'll say, listen, I want you to take it to the opposite field in the air on a line into that corner of the cage on a long cage drill. And these kids will pull 3 balls in a row, and I'm like, and what I say to them was like, well, first off, that's the opposite of what I'm asking you to do. And second off, if you pull 2 balls after you try to go to the opposite field gap, you got to question yourself and say, what do I need to do here adjustment-wise, right, to do what I'm supposed to be doing. I think the adjustment part of baseball and doing it quicker, than everyone else, that's how you end up becoming a better player.
Yeah, well, my theory on that is I don't think kids today, and again, anything I say, I'm painting with a broad brush, and so there's obviously always exceptions, and not everybody does this, but I think it's generally speaking, there's not as much free play today as there was when you and I were growing up. And what I mean by that is, we were constantly playing yard football or basketball against each other, or wiffle ball against each other, without any referee, without any adult, supervision or instruction. And so, if you're playing yard football and your buddy's faster than you, about the third time he runs right by you, well, you're going to give him about a 10-yard cushion, so he can't do that anymore. You learn how to make these competitive adjustments on the fly that give yourself a chance to, do what the task is. And I feel like that at least my coaching experience has been that everybody wants A plus B equals C. And some of that is a result of this hunt for the holy grail of hitting mechanics or pitching mechanics, where kids grew up in a cage. And it's like, if you just do, if you just execute these mechanics, you're going to turn into Mike Trout. I mean, that's not reality. But everybody's looking for that. And so if something happens off script, there's less ability to make those adjustments that we're talking about kind of on the fly, which to me, to be a great baseball player, you have to do that, because baseball at the end of the day is more art than science. I mean, there's numbers and all that, but it's an art, and you have to learn how to see what's happening and react to that accordingly, and to try to put yourself in a position where you have a chance competitively. And I don't see as much of that willingness or ability to make those adjustments. A funny story, when I finished, I went back to Rice to get my degree to finish up, because I knew that I would need to have it if I wanted to coach in college. And I was helping out with the Rice team, and we had this guy in particular, and I had him in the cage, and I was like, all right, we're hitting this ball back up the middle. Ball right down the middle off the tee. Barrel hook, barrel hook, barrel hook, barrel hook. About the 4th time, I was like, that ain't it, that ain't it, that ain't it. And so finally, after about the 6th or 7th time, I said, look, I will give you $1 million if you can hit this ball off the back net. And I don't care what you do. Just hit it off the back net. Dude, he hooked another one right in the corner. I was like, I mean, if somebody had made me that offer, I'd have squared all the way around.
Batista.
They just wouldn't do it. So I don't know. But maybe I'm not ready.
Real quick, we had Dante Bichette on, and what you guys are talking about right now, it's a pretty good comp. He comped the way some coaches are teaching hitting these days to trying to teach a tennis player only to hit forehand winners. And so basically, here's my swing, it's done. I'm the best forehand winner hitter in tennis, but if you throw it to my backhand, I can't make that adjustment because I haven't practiced it.
Yeah, well, I call that the wooden Indian swing. I mean, like, if you gave a wooden Indian a bat and just spun it on its axis, and the bat comes through in one plane, and if the ball hits it, great, and if not, you're out. I mean, it's just, you're seeing a lot of that. And I actually think the shift has something to do with that, because guys they're like, look, I mean, if I hit a ball on the ground, I'm out, so why not try to hit it 17 rows deep? But it's, the state of the game now, especially from a hitting standpoint, there's a lot of challenges. The pitching's better. You guys are throwing harder. There's more specialty relievers, as far as bringing. Back when we played, you could count on facing a starter probably 3 times, and if you had to face him the 4th time, that meant he was really good. But now these guys are facing starters once or twice, and then they got to make an adjustment to a reliever and then another reliever. And so I'm not trying to say, the game's not easy, but for sure some of the things that are being taught now are counterproductive. And I think, being able to have the ability to adjust the barrel mid-swing is a skill that elite hitters have and a lot of guys don't have. And so, one of the things I like to do to teach that is play pepper. When I was a kid, we grew up.
Yes.
We played pepper all the time. And you learn how I'm going to hit a ground ball here. I'm going to hit a guy this one. I'm going to hit a guy, so you're learning how to manipulate the barrel mid-swing, which all good hitters have an ability to do.
So we talked to Dimitri Young recently, and I thought Dimitri was one of the great, best pure hitters I played against. And he's coaching high school. And we were talking about, what do you do with the kids? Well, first thing they do is they play pepper. And I'm like, man, what a lost art. Like, biggest thing about striking out is you're losing the feel for the barrel. You don't know where the barrel is. Man, if you played pepper every day for even 15 to 20 swings or whatever, every guy got 15 to 20 swings times 7, that's 140 swings a week. Then you do the math times month, 1 month, 2 months. All of a sudden, you start learning where the barrel is. And I think pepper is something that, that we need to keep doing. I love that you're doing that.
And it's fun. It's fun.
It's so fun. It's so fun. It keeps it's good for fielding and hitting.
The good news is, here's what's going to happen. The major league teams have sort of forced out the former players, so all the former players that want to coach are going to the lower levels, and so
that's awesome.
They're going to end up the pendulum will swing back the other direction because you're going to have better instruction at the lower levels than there's ever been.
That's awesome. Great.
They need it. Speaking of instruction and bat path, I thought this drill that you talked about, you told me that you did when you were coming up in the cages. Can you talk about that T drill that you did when you would put the ball? I think you said you put it like 10, 15 feet up on the opposite side, on the going the other way side, and you would try to hit the ball off the tee into that ball. First off, why did you do that? What was your thought process there?
Well, that's a corrective drill. So the drill is you have a tee and you have the ball, I like to put the tee always when I'm working as low as it can go because it makes guys stay down in their legs better. But so I put the tee low, I put it down the middle, and then I'll roll another ball out on the ground. So if it's a left-handed hitter, I'll roll a ball basically like towards the shortstop. Or if it's a right-handed hitter, I'll roll a ball towards the second baseman, and it needs to be 10 or 15 feet away from the tee. And then I'll instruct the hitter to hit the ball that's on the tee into the ball that's on the ground in the direction of the shortstop or the second baseman, depending on the handedness of the hitter. And so what that does, most guys have their swing flaw is they come up and they go to the pull side. So the barrel is moving up. If you're a right-handed hitter, most guys swing where the barrel's moving up and to the third baseman severely. So I'm trying to make you feel the barrel moving down and to the second baseman severely. And what ends up happening, I've seen more beautiful line drives hit when guys are trying to do that because it planes their swing out. So if they're used to swinging severely up and across, when I make them swing down into the opposite field, what ends up happening is they get sort of in the middle, which is where you want them to be. So you're trying to make them feel something, and to their mind, it feels extreme and extremely opposite, but it's really the right way to swing the bat. So when I teach hitting, or when I'm talking to guys about teaching hitting, I tell them, look, you always have to keep in mind there's a difference between feel and real. So what I feel like's happening is not really what's happening.
Yes. Oh, that's so good.
I would think as a left-handed hitter, I was thinking I'm hitting straight down on top of the ball. But really, if I look at a video of my swing's working up. But in my brain, I had to tell myself to swing down to get the swing that I wanted, to keep from dumping my barrel behind and those kind of things. So I will tell guys that right out of the chute, you're going to feel like you're chopping a piece of wood, but you're really not. Your swing is planed out like you need it to be. So never forget there's a difference between feel and real. And that's why it's hard for somebody that really hasn't hit to look at video and teach hitting, because you have to know what that feels like, or some of the things that you can, sort of internalize as a hitter to be able to communicate that to other hitters.
That is so Berkey, that is so good. I had to write that down because I'm gonna use that. But the feel versus real, I mean, that is so true. And I know for me, sometimes I would cast my hands out too quick. I'm like, man, I'm just cannot stay back on that plane where the barrel's staying back. I used to think sometimes I would almost like do the Chris Taylor. I would dump my barrel back here on the movement to the ball, and it would allow me to delay just a little bit, but it worked. But you would never teach that, to dump the barrel. You would never teach a guy, hey, listen, once you get on the tee, you dump the barrel. But for me, at that time, when I was bringing my hands too forward, I just couldn't stay back on off speed. I was jumping out to the ball. I started to think, okay, your first movement when the ball's coming is dump your barrel back. And I started raking for a few weeks, and I thought, you would never teach that? It's feel versus real, right? It's just that's what I had to do.
Yeah.
Right?
It's funny you say that because I have a kid on my team right now. I told him to do the same thing. Like, feel like you're dumping your barrel behind you, because he's such a severe down and across. I want him to feel more locked in his swing. So, I mean, it's absolutely. Hitting and teaching hitting, it's not a one-size-fit-all deal. I mean, you can't have like one hitting philosophy that you try to broadly apply to a group of hitters, because you're going to have some upswingers, you're going to have some downswingers, you're going to have some guys that come out of their legs, you're going to have some guys that get stuck on their backside. So you've got to learn how to recognize what the particular dysfunction is and come up with ways to combat that with each individual hitter.
Oh man, this is just. I mean, we could talk hitting all day. It's just such good stuff, and I'm learning a ton. Man, I wish we would have talked more when we were playing. We talked a lot, but we should have talked more hitting.
Well, one thing you never had to worry about is your legs were always good and stretched out in the box. Like, you never had a tight there was no chance of pulling a muscle coming out, because they were always stretched out good.
Well, that's why I ran so well, because my pre-pitch routine, stretch, hamstring left, hamstring right, double chicken wing. I'm like, what the heck am I doing? But I couldn't stop doing it because it was my routine.
I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I can't stop it. I got into a compulsion one year where the plate had to be totally clean. Like, if there was a piece of dirt on the plate, I had to clean it off. It was like this weird OCD thing, and I couldn't hit if I knew there was a speck of dirt on the plate.
Dude, isn't that funny how you do as a hitter? You get OCD, and like I used to get I would do that routine all the time. I remember my in '99 we were playing the Brewers at the end of the year with like 3 games to go. I would do my thing, Berkey, stretch to the left, stretch to the right, chicken wing, shoulder roll, and literally I was like, what the hell am I doing? But I got to do it. I got to be ready to go. This one, Berkey, we get to the Brewers. It's like biggest game of the year. We need to win it. Blah blah blah. With 7-hour rain delay, come out. There's like 2,000 fans in the stands, Milwaukee County Stadium. I get in there, bam, stretch to the left, stretch to the right, chicken wing, boom, double shoulder roll, get in the box, and then I do the back leg lift, which is so ridiculous. No one's ever seen that ever. I'm like, I'm doing. So I start back leg lifting, and every time I lift my leg up, and the Brewers fans go 1, and then I'm like, what the heck? I lift it up again, 2. And I'm looking around like, what's going on here? So then I get the 3, boom, whatever. Well, it turns out Bob Uecker was telling these guys, hey, this Casey guy's coming in for the last series. I've never seen anything like it. He lifts his back leg. Let's do it as fans. Whenever this guy lifts his back leg, let's chant 1, 2, 3. So they were so in my dome on my 4th at bat. It was the only time in my career I didn't lift my leg. And they were like, boo!
Thanks a lot, Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Yeah, this isn't funny. I'm trying to focus here. Crying out loud.
Right. I mean, I got to lift my leg. Look, I got to do it, Bob.
It's ridiculous. So, Berkey, you rake in the minors, dominate there, bring all your techniques that you're talking about here. Tell us about the call, because I think that's one of the biggest things for a big league ball player is, man, where were you? Who told you were going to the big leagues, and who did you call, to let them know?
Yeah, so that I was in AAA with the Zephyrs in New Orleans, and that was in '99. And that year, they were putting together the Olympic team that was going to play in 2000. So there was a qualifying tournament of the Pan Am Games up in Canada, and so the guys that they thought might be on that 2000 Olympic team, because that was like I think the first year they let pro guys play. Maybe it was '96, but I think it was 2000 was the first year that pro guys could play. So they had chosen me as being one of those guys. So in the middle of the season, there was like a 2-week break, or the players that were going to play on that USA team took a 2-week break, and we were supposed to fly to Arizona, have a mini spring training, and then go straight to Canada and play in this tournament. So I'm on the plane from New Orleans to Phoenix, and back in those days, I think it was like the first cell phone, the one that came with its own radio, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, we need some air support. I was telling this cell phone back then. So we land in Phoenix, and my phone just is blown. You can tell when you get messages or whatever. So I pushed the button, and my wife was with me, and it was Jerry Hunsaker, and he said, "Hey, as soon as you land, call me. We're calling you up to the big leagues." Like, oh my gosh, So immediately, I'm just like super nervous, and I've landed in Phoenix, and I've got to turn around immediately and get on another plane and go back to Houston, and
wow.
So I'd call my dad, and just so some friends just to let them know what was going on, but I don't think I slept for 48 hours, literally. I mean, like the whole you remember probably what it felt like, but and walking into the Astrodome and see. Then back then, and I know I've said back then so many times, but back then, the younger players, the philosophy was you don't come to spring training with the big club unless you have a legit chance to make the team. So I'd never been around any of those guys. I'd never been to big league spring training, even though I was the top pick or whatever, and I've been to 2 minor league spring trainings. So I'm walking into that clubhouse. You got Bagwell and Biggio and Moises Alou and Billy Spires and Billy Wagner and guys like that that have been there forever and they're stars, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't know anybody. I felt so out of place, and it was extremely uncomfortable. And I honestly don't have fond memories of that first stint in the big league. I didn't do as good as I thought I should, and it was tough. I mean, it was a very tough adjustment mentally, and so, but fortunately, I got through it.
Who'd you get your first hit off of?
Bartolo Colon.
Really?
Yeah. So the first time I played was we were playing interleague, the Indians back then they were Bartolo Colon and Jim Thome was at first, and Manny Ramirez and Roberto Alomar. I mean, it's just unreal to me.
Yeah. And that was like 70 pounds less Bartolo was back then, right? He was throwing like a billion miles an hour.
98. Yeah.
Berkey, that's the reason I was a Cincinnati Red. I came up with that team. They're like, oh, wait a minute. Why do you go to Cincinnati? We got so many good players on this team.
and the fact that you almost killed Bob Feller, but
what?
What
is this?
You told that story. This is the greatest baseball story I personally ever heard.
Berkey, I've never told this story before on this podcast.
I mean, you have to tell it. I mean, even if you have to do another show just to tell the story.
All right. I'm going to tell the story, Berkey, because I love it. This is one of the stories that we laughed our heart out. So I'm with the Indians, the team Berkey's talking about. Like, you're not cracking this lineup. It's 1998. I just hit 380 in Double-A, Triple-A, 97. I'm like the best prospect going. Like, I'm the guy. I'm like, boom, we're in business. I come to spring training in 98. I'm raking, and it looks like. I think Jim Thome's like 38. Turns out he's still 26. He already has like 300 homers. I'm like, I'm going to be out of here soon, right? So the one day I come and I'm like, you know what? I got to start impressing Mike Hargrove, who was the manager. I got to go out early. I got to get out there early. Game's at 1. I'm going to get out there at 12:20 to make sure he knows who I am, and then I'm a decent player. I don't know why that thought process was good, but that's how I was at 23. So I go rolling out there, and the only other guy in the dugout, so it was Mike Hargrove, Torey Lovello, who is the manager of the Diamondbacks. His career was about to be over, so he had the same thought process I had. I was trying to break in. He was trying to hold on, right? So we're sitting there in the dugout, and Bob Feller is a living legend, American hero, right? And he comes out every day, full uni, spikes high. He's like 79 at the time, like 80. I don't even know. He was a little older. But he comes out, and it's a full house because the Indians are the best team in baseball at the time, right? So every day we watch Bob Feller. Everyone's like, they like, ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the greatest American hero because he spent like 3 or 4 years of his career in his prime in World War II. Mm-hmm. Like if I did that, my career would be over. Like he came back and was still throwing 107, dominating people, right? So they're like, ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the greatest American hero of all time, number 19, Bob Feller. He'd take his hat off. 10,000 people, Winter Haven, Florida. Place is going bananas, right? Well, every day a player would throw with Bob, right? Couple of nice throws. Bob's on his way. Boom, going golfing, doing what he does, whatever. So that day, Mike Hargrove's like, hey, Case, great to see you're out here early, brother. He's like, why don't you go throw catch with Feller today? I'm like, that sounds great, Mike. I'm like, I got 2 knocks in the big leagues. And if I throw catch with Bob Feller, I'll have 3 stories to tell my kids if I don't ever play in the big leagues again because Jim Thome's the first baseman for the Indians, and I'm heading back to Buffalo soon, right? So I go out there and I introduce myself to Bob Feller. Hey, Mr. Feller, how you doing? I'm Sean Casey. Hey, nice to meet you, son. And I back up and boom, Feller gets the ball. He throws it to me. Boom, I catch it. I throw it back. And I'm throwing it nice and easy. Boom. And Torey Lavella's like, Case. I'm like, what's up, Torey? He's like, dude, clean it up, bro. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you're lobbing the ball to the greatest American hero of all time. You're showing him up. You're showing up, Bob Feller. You're lobbing it, rainbow throwing it. I go, you serious? He goes, yeah, give him something. So I'm like, all right.
You're playing catch with him like he's an invalid. I mean, you got to tighten it up.
It's unbelievable. So I'm like, all right, well, at this moment, no one knows this about me but me. At this time, I kind of had the yips. Like and if you've ever had the yips in baseball, that means like you can't throw the ball. Like, you're nervous to throw. Well, if you have the yips, there's 2 ways to throw the ball. You can lob it rainbow style like I'm doing to Bob and trying to get out of here unscathed, or you can throw it a little harder. There's no medium. The medium gets sailed and spiked, right? So I'm thinking to myself, okay, yeah, I'll throw it a little harder. So I start backing up, right? And Feller, you can tell Feller's like, the heck's this guy doing? Throw the ball. I want to go golf. I'm backing up, but I'm trying to gauge it. I'm like, if I get back far enough, I can now throw it to Feller, be perfect. So I back up, boom, I get the ball. I sling it to Feller, right? 4 years, World War II, dominating, comes back, nothing's ever happened to him. Bob Feller's gloves like this, right? And the ball's getting closer and closer. And I'm like, what the hell is he doing? Why is he not moving? Why is he not moving his glove? It gets closer. Boom! It hits him right in the heart. And he's like, he starts waddling. Boom! He goes down. Right? He goes down. He's face planted in the ground. And he's like, oh. He's like, oh. And I'm like, oh my God, I killed Bob Feller. I just go sprinting over. I'm like, freaking, this is as fast as I've ever run. I was like, Mr. Feller. Okay. And he's in the ground. He's like, oh my God, I think I killed Bob Feller. I hit him right in the freaking heart with a laser, right? Next thing I know, here comes the EMTs out of the crowd.
Oh,
my God. 10,000 people are now on their feet like, and I could hear him like, I was number 56 at the time. That's how good I looked. Like, who's 56? Who's 56? I'm like, oh my God, I'm 56. I'm going to be known as the guy that killed Bob Feller, like not a guy that had a good career in the big leagues. So the EMTs come out. They start shaking Bob around. He's just grinding. It's like 5 minutes. I'm like, back up, son, back up. I'm like, Bob's down. It's like, it's serious now. You can hear a pin drop. I'm just like sweating profusely. Like, oh my God, I killed Bob Feller. And next thing you know, like Jim told me, now the team's out there, right? The game's closing to start. It's delayed. Tomey's like, hey, what happened here, Case? I'm like, bro, I was like, I just played catch with Bob Feller. Freaking, I threw him a ball, hit him right in the heart. He's been down. He's been down. Guy's been down for 10 minutes, right? So then, sure enough, the training staff's there, EMT, they get him to his feet, and they're like, "Oh my God!" He's up, and they get Feller to his feet. And they're like, "Bob, what happened? What happened?" He's like, "Oh man, the young lad over there, just I was golfing yesterday, and I hit my driver into the ground. I must have jammed my shoulder. The young lad threw the ball to me, and maybe a little bit too hard. I couldn't get the glove over in time. Ended up hitting me right in the heart. And I'm like, oh dear God!" So they get Bob up. Freaking, they scooter him, into the ambulance. Off he goes to the hospital. I was sweating profusely. Number 56. I'm like, I'm never gonna get a lower number in my life. I'm such a terrible player. I got to get rid of the yips. I got to figure this out. So I start walking off. Mike Hargrove puts his arm around me. He's like, Case. He's like, man, it's your lucky day. I was like, my lucky day. Are you serious? He's like, yeah. He's like, if you'd have killed Bob Feller, bro, you definitely would have been released.
So good. That's so good.
Oh, I love it. Love that story.
Oh my God. Tears.
I mean, the better version of that is when you can actually demonstrate how Bob Feller hit the ground. I mean, that's so.
Yeah. When I do it, not sitting down, I show like Bob Feller goes down, and then, it's absolute anarchy. But oh my gosh, so crazy. But that was the team That's the team I was on. You know what I mean? And so many good
they also
players.
had Richie Sexton.
Dude, I was behind Richie Sexton too. And Richie ended up hitting 350 homers in the big leagues. Richie Sexton and Tommy, the three of us, we do picks in the morning every day. Berkey, 8 o'clock, Brian Graham would throw us picks. I'm like, I got no shot. I got to get out of here ASAP. I got to get out. I got to get out of here ASAP. Berkey, what about you coming up with the Astros though? Like, before you became Lance Berkman, you got Bagwell out there. You got Alou. There's not a ton of places to play. Like, what was your mentality on how do I break in to play in this lineup?
I mean, when I first got drafted by the Astros, when I found that out, because I played first base at Rice my junior year, and so when they drafted me, I thought, well, I mean, I'm going to get an outfielder's glove. I can't, I'm not playing first because they got Bagwell. So I'd been playing mostly in the outfield in minor leagues, and just felt like I didn't know, because we had Carl Everett, who was a good player at the time. We had Moises Alou, Richard Hidalgo's young player. At one point we had Bobby Abreu, who they ended up trading, which that kind of helped me. And so, I didn't know how I was going to get a shot. And really and truly, I was just at that time, and you're kind of just focused on the level that you're at. Like, I'm just trying to get a hit this time up, not really worried about what may or may not happen. I just felt like, if you play good enough, at some point something good will happen. And so, but I was kind of blocked, who was really fast, and put him in the outfield. And I got my break when he slid head first into first base and broke his hand and was going to be out like 4 months. So then that was when I finally got called up for good, and they stuck me in the lineup, and I started hitting, and I really never came out of the lineup after that. So.
Dude, well, 2001 was kind of your coming out party, and that was I had a, I ended up going to the All-Star game that year. That was your first All-Star game. That was our first All-Star game together. Can you tell? You went to 6 All-Star games, bro, right? Am I correct with saying that? 6? Did I nail that, or is it 7?
That's right. Yeah.
6 All-Star games.
6. No.
And I look back at so many. I have so many fond memories of the All-Star games. Can you give us like 1 or 2 of your best stories from the All-Star games? One of those 6 All-Star games that you remember, like, man, that was awesome.
I mean, well, first of all, getting to hang out with guys like you and Todd Helton, and guys that or like Ryan Klesko, just dudes that you like, that you play against, and you don't really get a chance to be around them in that type of environment. That's the best part of the All-Star game by far, is just the clubhouse interaction with guys that you spent a whole year grinding against, and now you're on the same team, and you're kind of, it's just fun. But the one story I think I remember the best out of any of them, my first All-Star game was 2001, and right before the break, we were playing the Diamondbacks, and Randy Johnson was pitching, and there was a guy on second base, and we got to, like, he got me to a 3-2 count. And I was like, well, I mean, it's either a fastball or slider. I can't hit the slider, so I'm just going to guess fastball and kind of start swinging before he lets it go. And he happened to throw me a fastball away, and I hit a double into right center and scored the run or whatever. So that was like the series before the break. So we go to that year, the game was in Seattle, and I'm out there, just like wide-eyed, like, oh, man, this is incredible. Like, you can't even, I mean, Tony Gwynn's there and all these guys. You're just like, what in the world, Cal Ripken Jr.? And so I don't belong here. But so I'm kind of just trying to mind my own business. I'm standing out in the outfield, shagging balls during BP. And all of a sudden, it was like this voice, like the PA from above is like, I should have thrown you a slider. And I was like, good grief. Turn around and look, and the unit is standing right behind me, like 7 feet tall, talking down, And I was like, oh, right, and just, man, I just guessed and whatever. But I'll never forget that voice coming from on high. I should have thrown you a slider. And just turn around, but there he is. So.
How about in 2000? One of the coolest moments I experienced was you were there too. I remember in 2004, we're in Houston. I'm talking to Moises Alou at our lockers. We're having a good conversation, and all of a sudden it gets like eerily quiet, like right after you hit Bob Feller, that quiet, like when you could hear a pin drop, right? And I remember looking over, and Muhammad Ali walks in the clubhouse. Do you remember? And those are that's one of the coolest memories I have is Ali walking in, how kind he was to everybody. He signed a bunch of autographs. He had the Parkinson's, but he was still kind of jabbing and weaving and wheeling and dealing. I just thought, wow, how cool is this that I play big league baseball, I make an all-star game, and Muhammad Ali is in our clubhouse.
Yeah, man, just very gracious and kind, like you said, and a guy that ferocious, you wouldn't necessarily in the ring, you wouldn't necessarily expect him to be that way, but he was very much accommodating, and I think that's the coolest part about playing baseball is just those things like that, the people that you get to meet, the relationships that you form. That is what's fun about it. It's not all the stuff that happens on the field is great, but it's really the stuff that happens off the field that makes it as special as it is. So,
how about Berkey, sticking with the 2004 All-Star game? That was my last All-Star game. I believe that was your second or third All-Star game, right?
Third, I think.
Your third All-Star game. One of the coolest things for me was, first off, I had my son Andrew there, who was 2 at the time, and just doing snowman on the dirt, and then pooped his pants. I yelled up, I'm like, we got a pooper.
Trainer.
So I'm like, trainer, it's time to get this kid out of here. He just pooped his pants, you know what I mean? So but I wanted to watch you because it was one of the coolest things in Houston. I remember you telling me before the game, you're like, Case, I'm gonna do the derby righty because I got more power. I'm like, wow, I've seen your power lefty. It's pretty good. Like, you got more power righty. You got to be kidding me. And you had the Crawford box there, the small porch. But right. Bro, I mean, one of the coolest things I had seen was the crowd reaction to you, man. Like, how much of a fan favorite you were there in Houston, and every time that you came up, how crazy that was in that environment. Take us back to that whole thing, the 2004 All-Star game in Houston. You're in the Derby, and just what was that like?
Man, it was that was definitely one of the highlights of my career from an individual standpoint. I'd done the Derby in 2002. That was the first Derby, and I kind of had a poor showing because there's somewhat of a technique to it, even though you don't think that. It looks like, oh, they'll just get a BP guy out there and then let the hitter swing as hard as he can, but you kind of have to pace yourself. There's sort of a way to go about it, and after having done that first Derby, and I didn't do very well at all, I was a little bit hesitant to agree to do it in 2004. And the other thing that made me hesitant, I have a picture of myself, and it's like Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, Ken Griffey Jr., Jim Thome. I mean, that's who was in that Derby. I'm like, fucking this Derby. I mean, and so. But because it was in Houston and I knew that the fans would I felt almost obligated for the fans' sake to do it, and I'm sure glad I did because it ended up being one of the great experiences of my career. And it's one of those special deals where you just kind of get locked into a zone, and like you said, right-handed. I wasn't as consistent, but I did feel like I could hit the ball a long way right-handed, and I got into a good groove with my BP thrower. And then it was just like with every homer, the crowd was just going more and more nuts. And President Bush was standing up in the, behind home plate. And I mean, it was crazy. And, the one thing about Minute Maid, when the fans are into it, it's one of the loudest places that you can be. I mean, the crowd energy there is second to none, really. And so that just, getting to the final, and then kind of finally did run out of gas because I felt like I chopped down a whole forest of trees, like chopping trees. But, looking back on that, my wife was there, of course, and it was thrilling. I mean, it really was, and kind of a magical deal to have happen in your home stadium with your home crowd.
Dude, I always wondered, what is it like in the Derby when the turtle's not there? Because is it so weird not having the turtle around you when you're out there? Do you feel naked?
Oh, completely. And it's like it's one of those deals, like a no-win situation. Because if you hit a homer, you're like, oh yeah, you're a major league hitter. You're supposed to get that. And then if you don't hit one, you're a buffoon. I mean, it's like, who is this guy? Why is he lost? So there's actually a lot of pressure, as funny as that sounds. And it kind of feels like you're hitting out in the middle of a goat pasture. I mean, there's just nothing around you. There's no fielders. I mean, it's just, you're kind of out there naked. So, yeah, it's weird.
Not to mention, you were up against those names you just mentioned. That's half of the people in the history of the world to hit 600 home runs, and you in a home run derby contest.
Right.
That's unbelievable.
Guys, yeah. Well, there were three of us that were in there that probably shouldn't be. It was me, Hank Blaylock, and Miggy that ended up winning it. I mean, it was like, it just shows you kind of, those guys had way more power than any of us did, but we ended up in the final because it's more than just about like how far you can hit it. There's technique and whatnot, and some guys, if you don't get into a good groove, it's just hard.
Mm-hmm.
You actually, and most guys that I know that are good hitters, they try not to hit elevated fly balls in batting practice. So sometimes it's hard to get your swing to get into that mode. So
yeah, and so you guys kind of meet at All-Star games and kind of get to know each other, but. My question to you is, because you guys are two of the most fun people I've ever followed and worked watching through the years. What was it like knowing Sean Casey, like getting to first base, and it's Lance Berkman and Sean Casey? Like, what were those like conversations like over the years?
Well, for me, the thing about Sean is the second you meet him, you feel like you've known him for like 40 years. So every time I get to first, it was old home week. I mean, it was everything I could do to keep from embracing him. But that was like awkward in the middle of a major league diamond.
I get it.
But I several times thinking, I was just like, you didn't want the hitter to do anything where you'd have to move. Like we were having a great conversation, like, dadgummit, we gotta have good conversation. But we definitely. Sean is my absolute favorite in terms of getting to first base and just engaging with the opposition. And I mean, in fact, there was a couple times like when, I remember you coming over to the house some when y'all were in town, and just like we would try to get together off the field, even though we never played together. But I just feel like Sean's kind of like a brother to me, even though like we've never been on the same team and we just had limited interaction. But he's just one of the best. That's why he's the mayor.
Oh man, it's so Berkey. It's so true, bro. Like I remember the first day meeting you, I'm like, oh my God, this is like my long lost brother. This guy's unbelievable. You know what I mean? Like we had so much of the same personality and the same interest and stuff. And it is funny. People ask me all the time, tell me about the conversation. Who was the best to talk to? And I always say Lance Berkman was the best. I was like, the conversations Lance and I would get going, how funny Lance was. And I was like, usually he wasn't stealing, so, he'd just be saying, hanging over there. We'd get to a 3-2, 3-2 pitch or whatever, a few pitches into it. But Berkey, I used to love, bro, and Chinch, you're going to love this, dude. Yeah. Berkey, he'd always come, he'd hit a rocket up the middle, just almost like tomahawk the freaking pitcher, bam, he'd be on first. I'm like, Berkey, what's going on, brother? How you doing? He's like, I'm miserable. I'm one of the worst players in the big leagues. I suck so bad. I can't wait to be done. And then I look up at the scoreboard. It's like 347, 41, and 110. I go, are you serious, bro? I was like, I want to start sucking like that. I want to be terrible. But I was like, I almost felt like that drove you, Lance, right? I almost felt like that thought process drove you sometimes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just got off the phone with Coach Graham. That's why I said that. No, I think, in some ways it's a double-edged sword because introspectively, as I look back, on my career, I didn't enjoy playing as much as I probably should have because I was so results-driven. And, you hear this quite commonly from athletes, but, if I was 3 for 4, I wasn't worried about the 3. I was worried about the 1 that I didn't get the job done. So, and then, even if you, let's say you're 2 for 4, but the 2 outs you made were with runners in scoring position or where you had a chance of driving a run and you didn't do it, like that was a bad night. So, just not being able to really enjoy the game because I was so focused on the results, I think, in one way it was good because it keeps you from getting satisfied. You never rest on your laurels. You always got to continue to do it and continue to prove yourself. But I think it definitely shortened my career because, you get to the end of it and it's like, man, I'm just tired of fooling with that. Like, I'm tired of feeling that way. And so that's a big part of how, I think, I think my career is probably shortened by 2 or 3 years just because of that, because I was just mentally got to the end of it and was just spent.
Yeah, dude, I can relate. It's those seasons. It feels like, man, the grind of trying to perform every single night. I was telling, my kids are getting a little older now. Like, Dad, you played 162 games. I'm like, yeah, in like 180 days. I'm like, it was, like mentally. I remember talking to Sidney Crosby one time, Penguins. He was like, I was in their clubhouse, their locker room. And he's like, he's a big baseball fan. He's like, man, we play 81 games, and we, obviously it's a little more taxing as far as like getting up and down the ice. But he's like, I don't know how you guys did it mentally. And I think that's what you're talking about, man. Just year after year after year of like expecting so much out of yourself. It gets old after a while. It grinds you down. It grinds you down.
Well, and there's just, and woe is the professional athlete. I mean, nobody feels sorry for us, nor should they. I mean, it's a great job. Make plenty of money. You're well compensated and all that. But, I mean, just from a personal standpoint, it does get to the point where you're like, man, I just don't have the mental or emotional energy to the expectation level that other people have, that you put on yourself, that your teammates have for you. After a while, it does get heavy, and that's why it's a young man's game. You kind of have to get. I think you're seeing younger players. I mean, guys, when you're in your 20s and whatnot, it's not as. But when you get to your mid to late 30s and you got family considerations and you got some injuries that you're dealing with, I mean, it's like you're hauling the dump truck to the park every day with you, and you get tired of doing that.
So true. You're right. In your 20s, you're like you're excited to get to the park. You're right. It's just it's the greatest job in the world. And I think as it goes on, like you said, when you start having kids, you're like, man, I want to be home with the kids sometimes. So I understand that. Dude, so, I mean, Berkey, there's so many numbers to talk through. I mean, so many great numbers that you've had. But I want to stay like, looking out to the 2005 team that you guys ended up going to the World Series. And I believe, was that the first time Houston had ever gone to the World Series?
Yeah, that first. 2005? Yeah. So in 2004, we won the first playoff series ever that the organization had won, and then the next year we went to the first World Series ever. And so, yeah, that was a cool time to be an Astro. Just that whole, 04, 5, and 6 are my 3 favorite years with Houston. So,
bro, the All-Star game both. I'm sorry, the All-Star game and the World Series the same year in Houston, right?
Yeah. No,
All-Star was 2004.
Yeah, so I was an All-Star in 04 and 06, and the year we made it to the World Series, I actually was. I didn't start playing that year until May 15th because I had torn my ACL in an off-season flag football accident, and so yeah, that was thrilled about that. But that we started out 15 and 30, and then ended up making it to the World Series.
That's crazy.
Berkey, I heard a story, bro, because I was doing my homework and I was like, man, I gotta make sure, filter out a couple stories. I have so many good stories. You told a story though when it was 2011. You were I think you were the Missouri personality of the year. Personality of the year, bro. That's what it was. Personality of the year. I'm like, oh, this fits this guy perfect, And you come out, you got everybody rolling and all that, and you told an unbelievable story about obviously. One thing that anyone knows, Lance Berkman, you're a very, very strong man of faith. And I think that's a big that's probably the most important part of your life. You told a story and it related to your faith. And it was about in 2005 when you had homered, I believe in game 5, bottom 7. Tell me if I'm right. You hit a 3-run homer to put you up 4-2.
Right.
And then you're so close to going to the World Series. Can you just take us back to that story about what was going through your head, how your faith was coming into play, and what happened?
Well, the context of this is I get, I when I go to speak at Christian things, people ask me a lot like, hey, we see athletes, and what happens if 2 of them are against each other and one's praying and the other one's praying? Like, how does prayer work? How does that work? Who does God honor, and, how do you make sense of it? And I was like, well, let me tell you a little story about me. I said, I don't know how it works for everybody else, but in 2005, just like you said, we're playing the Cardinals. The year before, the Cardinals had beat us in a really good NLCS in 7 games. And so we're like trying to break through for the first time ever, and we're on the precipice of going to the World Series. We're up 3-1. We just got to win one more game. Only problem was that the Cardinals started Chris Carpenter, who was absolutely dealing. I mean, he was like filthy nasty. And so they were up 2-1 going into the 7th inning. And somehow we got 2 guys on base, and which was kind of a miracle because the 05 Astros, in my opinion, easily have the worst offense that's ever been to a World Series. I mean, it was like we were scraping to get 1 or 2 runs, and hoping that Clemens and Pettit and Oswald would pitch victory. So Roger would be coming, Roger would be pitching. It'd be like nothing in the 7th, and he'd come in and he'd be screaming, "Put some at bats together!" And we're like, "Ryan, I mean, what do you want us to do?" So here we are. It's like 2-1, and so we somehow get 2 guys on base, and Carp threw me a sinker down the way, and I had a line drive in the cropper boxes, and it was a 3-run homer, and it was like, dude, you talk about, you hear people talk about rounding the bases on air. I mean, that was me. I was like, this is unreal. Like, I just put us in the World Series. 7th inning. I mean, we got the greatest bullpen in the history of the game. We got Lidge, and we got, Wheeler and Qualls. I mean, they're scoring, and we're up by 2 runs. And so, and the place was going crazy. I mean, I've never been in a place where there was more energy and the roof was closed. I mean, you couldn't hear yourself think. I mean, it was the greatest moment of my career to that point. And so I'm on first base, and there's this buzz, and we need 6 outs to go to the first World Series ever. So I start praying, like, man of faith. I'm like, Lord, if you just let us get these last 6 outs, I promise in the post-game press conference, I'll make sure and give you all the glory. Like, I'll say, God, you're the one that gave me the ability to do this. Kind of that false humility deal that you hear a lot. And so I was like, Lord, just please let us get these last 6 outs. Well, 8th inning worked like a charm. We get them 3 up, 3 down. We go back in, we don't score. So now we're 3 outs away, and I'm like, Lord, please just. And when I tell you, like, I'm looking up in the stands, and people are starting to come down from the upper deck. They're going to charge the field. And so now I'm thinking, like, should I let them carry me off on their shoulders? So I'm like, Lord, just let us get these last 3 outs. Well, first 2 guys, Lidge gets them out, no problem. And then David Eckstein comes up, and he's got 2 strikes. And, dude, I mean, it was unreal. It was like, we're about to go to the World Series. This is incredible. And so gets 2 strikes, and then Lidge leaves a slider up just a little bit, and he hits like a 40 hopper in the 6th hole. Base hit, no problem. We still got a 2-run lead, man on first base. Jim Edmonds comes up. Then Lidge, like, just kind of rattled him. And so 4-pitch walk, and now it's first and second. I was like, Lord, now, we got the deal, right? We're going to get this last out, and I'm going to give you all the glory in the post-game press conference. Just make it sure. And so Gar calls a timeout. Phil Garner's our manager, calls a timeout, runs them out. Here comes Albert Pujols, greatest hitter in the history of the game, in my opinion. And at this time, he's at the peak of his powers. I mean, this dude was unreal. And so he's coming up to the plate, and Gar runs out to the mound. He's like, what do you want to do? I was like, dude, we got to walk this guy. Let's walk him back. I mean, no disrespect, but Juan Encarnacion is the hitter standing on deck. And I'm like, dude, if Juan Encarnacion beats us, then okay, we can live with that. But we can't let this guy beat us. So Gar was like, no, I don't want to do that. So he said, let's just pitch him careful, which is a kiss of death,
It's the kiss of death.
I run back to first base, and I'm thinking, oh Lord, just let us get this last guy out. And so Lidge, first pitch, throws like a 40-foot slider. I mean, I'm talking about it bounced in the grass, and Albert swung at it, which he never does, right? And so I'm thinking, Lord, that's a better idea. Strike him blind, like just temporarily, but strike him blind and let us get this last out. And so next pitch, as everybody that knows baseball history knows, Lidge hangs a slider, and Albert hits it like 700 feet. It still hadn't landed. And so his 3-run homer trumped my 3-run homer. And so I'm on first base, and it, like, the place went from pandemonium to literally you could hear Albert's cleats digging into the ground to round first. I kid you not. And so I'm like, Lord, that's not the deal. Like, what is it? And so anyway, we ended up getting beat, obviously. And so after the game is over with, we go back into the clubhouse, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just, everybody's miserable. You're just sick at your stomach. And somebody flipped on the post game, and who is giving an interview, giving God all the credit for his 3-run homer, but Albert Pujols. And I was like, okay, all right, I got it. So the lesson I learned from that was that God doesn't need me to get glory for himself. Like, he can use whoever he wants in whatever the situation. So obviously that was not a prayer prayed in the right spirit, because it was very selfish in nature and that sort of thing. So that's the story I tell to kind of illustrate, a time when I was not praying with the right heart.
That is awesome.
So great, dude. That is such a great story. Such a good story. There's one other story, bro, that I just have to throw in there because it was one of the funniest stories that you had told. After I told the Bob Feller story, you came back with this story. I almost had to call the ambulance on myself. Thought I was going into cardiac arrest. Can you take us back to Wrigley Field?
Oh, gosh.
Because you have to take us back, because I end up having a conversation with Mike Remlinger a few months ago about it, which is awesome to get both versions. So good. So can you take us back to Wrigley Field? Was that 2005, 2004?
No, I think it was 03 or 4. No, I think it was 04. Yeah, I think it was 04.
2004, one of the best stories I've ever heard. You got to take us back to the story. It's so funny.
Well, this one is it's kind of like your Bob Feller story. It's funnier when I can demonstrate kind of what was going on, but I'll try to do the best I can. So 2004, kind of an underachieving team. But here we are. We're coming down the wire. It's like September, and we go into Chicago for a 4-game set, and we have got to win at a minimum 2 of these 4. Like, we cannot let them win 3 out of 4. We got no shot at the playoff. So we end up losing the first 2 games, and it's like, oh gosh, now we're all in desperation mode. So game 3, we come out there, and it was late in the game, tie ball game, or it was a low scoring affair. We get the bases loaded. And they bring in Mike Remlinger, who at the time was one of the premier left-handed relievers in all of baseball. And so, they wanted to turn me around and make me hit right-handed. And so Remlinger comes in, and I'm like, all right, all I need is a sac fly, bases loaded. Don't get greedy, just drive in a run, put us up. So I'm up there, and he throws a first pitch heater. And when I tell you it was right down the middle, I mean, it split the plate in half. And I put my A swing on it. I mean, I was not late. I was ready. And I fouled it straight back, and I was like, dadgummit, that's it. That's the only pitch you're going to get. So now I'm just like, oh, gosh. And so I get back up there after I've regrouped, and the next pitch is right at my head. And to this day, I have no idea how I got out of the way. It was like I dropped right straight down, but when I did, the ball went right over the top of my head, and it hit my bat for strike 2, except for when it was a yard sale. So the bat goes flying, helmets everywhere, like I'm laying in the dust. And I'm about to get up, and I hear the home plate umpire with Chuck Merriweather, and he goes, I think it hit him. And as soon as he said that, I just took a flop. I went down like a bag of hammers. I was, comatose. And I even gave it like a little, like where your leg kind of twitch, kind of like a little, like I'm having a brain seizure or something. And so just to sell it. So nobody knows what to do. Like the crowd's quiet. Like, I'm laying in the dirt. Our trainer runs out, and because he had some experience with me, he knew that I had a couple of fake injuries in my bag of tricks. He gets the pin light out, and he's like, "Did it really hit you?" And I was like, "Nope." And he goes, "All right, just stay with me." So he's going through the whole neurological exam on the field. Meanwhile, Dusty Baker is managing the Cubs, and he walks over there, and Dusty, he wanted to argue it, but at the same time, he was like, if this really did hit him in the head, I don't want to be a jerk. So he's kind of having this calm discussion with Chuck Merriweather back there. Meanwhile, they got the EMTs, making sure that everything's good. So, true champion, fought my way up, get up, dust myself off, and I'm going down to first base. They give me a standing ovation. Now, because the bases are loaded, run scores, and in the process of all this, I look up, and Jeff Bagwell was on second base. And he knew that it didn't really hit me. So he's he has his head literally in his hands. He's doing just like this, totally disappointed. I can't believe my friends, what are you doing? And I had the same thought, because about halfway through it, I was like, what are you doing? It's kind of like when you're talking about stretching. But at that point, you're too far into it. I'm already, I've got to just see this thing through.
Go with it.
There's no way I can be. Yeah, I can't go, oh, wait a minute. No, it didn't really hit me. So anyway, make a long story short, I get up, I get on to first base, I get a standing ovation. You know, everybody's like, what a warrior. I mean, this guy. And next thing you know, at Wrigley, they didn't have the video replay board up on the deal, but they had those TVs that were up kind of by the concession stand. So when people are standing in line, to get the concession stand, they don't miss the game. Well, apparently they started playing a replay of it, and people started to realize that it didn't really hit me. And so, like, this cascade of boos starts up at the concession stand, and it, like, travels down into the, lower levels and at the field. And before you know it, like, I thought I was going to be under attack. I mean, these people are going just absolutely nuts. Like, oh, Berkman, I can't believe you do that. And now I'm just like, oh, gosh. So poor Mike Remlinger, throughout this whole ordeal, he thinks he's killed me. Like, he's standing on a mound, and, he's flustered. And we ended up scoring like 5 or 6 runs after that. It totally unhinged him. And I felt horrible. And after the game, the reporter comes in there and they're like, well, did that ball really hit you? And I was like, well, I went down hard. I don't really know what happened. Kind of trying to get out of it. But it was a bad deal. Not my finest moment on a baseball.
But so good though. No replay. I mean, can't tell you how many times I'd foul a ball off and like 2 strikes. It didn't hit my foot, but I'd be limping like, oh man, my toe! I broke my toe. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we were almost taught back then. You got to sell it. What's so funny is
before replay, I'd tell guys all the time, if you don't have a fake injury in your bag of tricks, you can't play in the big leagues. Like, just an essential part of your weaponry when you go out there. So.
It's so true, dude. It's so true. I saw Remlinger probably right before COVID hit, like in January. I was out in Arizona, and I saw him this one night, and I'm like, because I played with Rem in Cincinnati a little bit, and I was like, I heard the greatest story from Lance Berkman, and obviously you're on the other end of this story. Tell me what happened. He's like, oh, man, you kidding me? Obviously, he loves you. He loves you. Everyone loves you. But he's like, you got to be kidding me. He's like, I came in and up and in on Burke. I thought I killed him. It hit him in the head. Equipment went everywhere, and then he gets to first base, and then he goes, then in Wrigley, they start realizing, it didn't hit him. He goes, then I give it up. I just can't get it out. He's like, I'm just poop-souping it up there. Guys are hitting rockets everywhere, And then he said when he got taken out of the game, when you went out to the next inning, he said he came on the field, was like, Berkman, I'm coming after you every time I'm going to hit you every time I face you the rest of the time. I'm going to hit you every time I face you.
He was some kind of hot. Well, I felt horrible. I called him that night, and I was like, dude, I mean, I know you're going to be upset. You have every right to be. But just know that I have no idea why I did that or what I was doing. I mean, I got caught in a bad spot, and I apologize greatly. And if you want to drill me every time from now on, you're more than welcome.
Did he ever drill you after that?
No, because I think after he calmed down, he could appreciate that I called him or whatever and tried to make it right. But it was
awesome.
I'm glad that since, but now looking back 20 years or whatever, not that long, but a while. Maybe, heck, it is almost 20 years.
Yeah.
But looking back on that, it's good to laugh, but at the time, not happy.
Well, he's laughing about it now, bro. He's laughing about it now. A great conversation. It was so funny. So, dude, 2005, tell me about that World Series with the Astros. Like, I know you guys, got hit pretty hard by the White Sox. I think you got swept. But I want, with that, I want to ask a couple things on top of that. Bagwell and Biggio, their influence on you and the influence of them being in that World Series.
Well, I mean, Baggy and Biggio, the great thing about coming up with Houston when I did, it was tough because there was a lot of older players, but they were, you talk about 2 of the consummate professionals that have ever played the game. I mean, both of those 2 guys, and they're vastly different in personality. Biz is more of an acerbic personality. Like he's definitely got more of an edge. Bagwell's more like your older brother. But what I respected about both of them was, number one, they wanted to play every day. It doesn't matter. Like, they wanted to play 162 games, and which is crazy. And the mentality of the big leagues has totally changed on that. Maybe for the better, but at that point, it was like a badge of honor. We're playing every game, no matter what. And they kind of expected you to do the same thing. And the second thing is, they really had a great understanding for what makes a complete baseball player. In other words, it's not just about your offensive numbers. It's about your base running. It's about the way you play defense, your positioning, all of those things that go into making a good baseball player. And they were both exemplary in those areas. And just, they wanted and expected professionalism from the younger players. And so they really, I feel like, brought me up the right way in the game. And I owe a debt of gratitude to both of those guys. And also guys like Brad Osmus and Bill Spire, Doug Henry and Tim Bogar, some of the veteran guys that were on that team. It was a great, in some ways it was hard, but in some ways it was a great way to come up into the big league. So to be able to get to the World Series in 2005 with those guys, I think that was the last year of Bagwell's career, just to be able to do it with them and get them to that. Yeah, that sounds pompous. I don't mean that, but I'm just saying, like, them being on that team, and when we all got to the World Series was such a thrill. Just, let them have a chance to play in the World Series. I'm playing the World Series. It was just great. And what was funny about that is, we hadn't had a very good offense. Like I'd mentioned, we kind of struggled to score runs that year. But when we got to the World Series, I think we scored, 4 runs, 7 runs, and like 6 runs. I mean, we scored quite a bit, and it was almost like we flipped the script. We had a hard time preventing runs as opposed to scoring them. And it was probably, it was a 4-game sweep, but it was probably the best 4-game sweep there were 2 walk-off wins. They walked off on a homer. We played a 13-inning game. They won 1-0. They came back. We had a big lead in game 1. They had a grand slam to come back. So those kind of things that it was a great World Series, even though it didn't last very long, and they just had a really good team. And, I don't think we were quite ready to win at that point.
Yeah. Well, first off, all the years I played 12 years in the big leagues, I got there once and didn't win it with Detroit. So I know, first off, how hard it is to get there, but how hard it is to win it is even harder. So fast forward in a few years, Berkey, when you leave Houston, you go to New York, quick thing, but then you go to St. Louis. I want to get in your head about you signing with St. Louis. Why St. Louis? And obviously it turned out to be the right place, but what was your thought process on signing with St. Louis in 2011?
Well, the one thing that made the years with the Astros 4, 5, and 6 so special was we had a great rival in the St. Louis Cardinals in our division. And every time we got together with those guys, they had some great teams, with Scott Rowland and Albert and Jim Edmonds and guys like that, Wainwright, Carpenter, just a great team.
Matt Morris. Matt Morris.
Yeah, Matt Morris. All those guys, really good, really a good team. And so, but we played them every time we played them. It was like tight ball games. Nobody ran away with it. And there was just this mutual respect that we had. And it was never a nasty rivalry like you can see where there's beanballs going back and forth. It was none of that. I think it was just 2 teams that really respected one another. And so from that experience, I felt like, man, if I ever have an opportunity to play there, I kind of want to see what it's like from that other side. And just the history of the Cardinals organization, they're second to the Yankees with 11 World Championships. So it's been a winning organization. Everybody that you ever talk to that plays there will tell you, man, if you ever have a chance to play in St. Louis, you got to do it. So I think it's a number of factors combined. I had a real familiarity with the guys on the team and with the organization and a real desire to kind of experience that. So that was what led me to – it was almost St. Louis or bust. I really wanted to go there, and fortunately they wanted me also.
Dude, all the years, come on, you got it. All the years I played in that same division with you, bro, playing against you, playing against the Cardinals – I know him now but I didn't know him when I played. But Tony La Russa, I couldn't stand him.
Yeah, when we played against him, I was like, I will meet you in the parking lot. Dude, I don't care how old you are. And so, yeah, totally. I felt the exact same way. Yeah. Yet now, when I got a chance to play for him, he's my favorite manager. I love the guy. Wow. So,
dude, but why? Tell me why? Because all of us that watch the Cardinals that play against La Russa were like, I can't stand that guy. But everyone that plays for him is like, oh, the greatest manager I've ever played for. Why?
Well, dude, first of all, this guy wears sunglasses at night, and he's like making these moves, where when you're playing against him, you're like, oh, he thinks he's smarter than the game, and he's like trying to do all this stuff, and he just he's expressionless, like you never seen. It's just like I don't know, just like he's an easy guy to dislike from the other side.
He's wearing spikes. Isn't he wearing spikes during the game? You're like, guy's got spikes.
Well, I don't know. I know Jim Leland used to do that. I never saw Tony do it, but maybe because he had shingles the whole year and didn't want to trip and fall and get it. Right? I don't know, but so when you play against him, you kind of have that take on him. But then when you play for him, what you understand is, number one, this guy is not in it for his own personal glory. Like, I think that's what was irritating. You felt like, oh, this guy thinks he's smarter than the game. That's not it. Like, he's making those moves and doing what he does because he truly believes that that's what puts his team in the best position to win the game. And that's all he cares about. He doesn't care about what the media says. He doesn't care about what other players might say. Like, he is there to do one thing, and that's to win a baseball game. And he does that by putting his guys in the best chance, the position that will best help them perform well. So that's one thing. And the second thing is he's got a great personality. Like, you don't get to see that from the other side because he just sits over there with kind of straight face. But when you're behind the scenes, this guy is funny. Like, he's witty. He's really, really smart. He's well read. Like, he's a fun guy to talk to and, pick his brain on stuff. And he takes care of his players. Like, that if a brawl broke out, I mean, Tony's going to be right in there swinging with you. Like, he is ready to do business for his guys. And I really appreciate that in a manager. So
Cool.
That is so cool. That is so cool to hear that because like I said, playing against him all those years, I wanted to charge the dugout a couple times. Like, I used to be like, I couldn't hit Steve Klein. It was so frustrating. Kleiner just dominated me. Sinker slider. It was the only time I was guessing. I was like 0 for my first 20 against him, right? And La Russa, okay, he'd bring him in 3-2 in the 8th. Okay, here comes Klein. No doubt he's going to face me a couple guys off. If it was 9-0, they'd winning in the 8th. I'm like, he'd be like, time. I'm going to get Klein. Why are you going to get Klein? It's 9-0.
Yeah, just let me hit up a Garrett Stevenson or something. I mean, just like nice righty 8-6. I mean, come on.
I'm 3 for 3, looking for a 4 for 4. Guaranteed 3 for 4 if Klein comes in. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. La Russa's going to get Klein in the 8th, not 9-0. You got to be kidding me. So, but Berkey, I think that you've had a Hall of Fame career. 2011 though. Let's go back to that game 6, right? Game 6, probably the biggest at-bat of your life. Can you take us back, paint the picture of what that was like for you and getting that humongous hit against Feldman, that single to center field to tie the game?
Yeah, for sure. So that's the second half of the first story I told about the 05 deal when I was praying. So this is where it kind of comes back in a positive way. So that year, for all of the regular season, Albert hit 3rd, Matt Holliday hit 4th, and I hit 5th. And then when we got into the playoffs, Matt had slid into 3rd base and he was having some hand problems. So at one point during the World Series, Tony came to me and said, "Hey man, I'm gonna hit you 4th, behind Albert because Matt's, his hands has bothered him or whatever." So I was like, "Okay, no problem." Except for simultaneous to that, Albert hit 3 home runs in Game 3 of the World Series, and from that point forward, it was obvious that the Rangers weren't going to pitch to him. I mean, when he came up, it was like 4 wide ones go down to first base. So, having played as long as I have, I knew that, it's going to come on me. Like that, I'm hitting behind Albert. They're not going to let Albert beat him, so I'm going to be the one that's going to be in the grease in some major at bat that are coming up. So I start praying, and having learned my lesson from the first time, I was like, Lord, if you would just let me, if I get into one of those big spots, don't let me be overwhelmed by it. Don't let the moment be too big. Help me to be able to relax. Help me to be able to focus. Help me to be able to compete with the ability that you've given me, and help me to be okay with the outcome. And that was my prayer, literally, like for 3 days. And the reason I had so much time to think about it is because we had a rain out. So we had an off day and a rain out before Game 6. And so that, as you know, like when you're in the playoffs, off days are the worst. And if you have an off day and a rain out, that's like
terrible. Yeah.
Terrible. I mean, you just want to play. Like, we're used to playing, and now we got to sit around. So you have time to think about all the bad things that could happen. So I'm literally, every time I get that sick feeling in my stomach, I start praying. And I'm like, Lord, just please let me be able to. So that's sort of the background of that. So we go, and, people that know Game 6, it was an ugly game at first. It was back and forth. We're down by 3 runs heading into the 7th inning. And, Alan Craig comes up and hits a solo home run, sort of at the time it seemed like an innocuous deal. Like, okay, we went from a 3-run deficit to a 2-run deficit. Well, now we're in the 9th inning. We're still down by 2. Great comeback, series of events ending with Freeze hitting a line drive off the wall. And I scored from first base on his triple. Like, me and Albert were on first and second, and we scored to tie the game. So we go back in, and it's the top of the 10th inning. And they get a guy on base, and Josh Hamilton hits a 2-run homer to put them back up by 2 runs. And we're just like, you have enough game experience to know that we came back. It was a miracle to come back from 1 deficit we ain't doing it again. I mean, there's no way in back-to-back coming back from 2-2-run deficits. So I'm thinking, well, the Rangers deserve it. They got a great team. I'm standing out there in right field. And I happened to look up at the big board, and I noticed that, I was the sixth hitter up in the inning, due up. Now, I was hitting fourth in the lineup, but we had 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, and I knew I was going to be the sixth guy up. And I thought, oh, gosh, whenever you're the sixth hitter in the lineup, there's a good chance that you won't hit. But if you do hit, there's going to be guys on base, and there's probably going to be, at least one out, if not two. So I was like, this is it. I just knew, this is going to be – something's going to happen. It's going to come down to me. So sure enough, we get back in the dugout. Base hit, bunt him over, ground ball, fielder's choice. Now we're only down a run. Now Albert's, coming to the plate with John Jay on second base, and who is sitting there in the on-deck circle? And it was like, people, you hear people talk about butterflies. I had pterodactyls flying. And I always tell kids, you hear little kids all the time. They're like, oh, in the backyard, bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, World Series, I'm at the plate. If you knew what that was really like, you would never play that. You would never play that game. I mean, it would just be like, hey, top of the first, nobody on, So, I mean, I was just like, I can't even describe the nervous energy. So I'm in the on-deck circle. I'm feeling that way. I'm kind of in the fetal position, which that's another one of my lines. I tell guys, if you can't hit in the fetal position, then you can't hit the big leagues, because, there's so many times when you're like, oh, gosh, make it go away, but you still have to hit. You still have to go up there. They're not going to stop and tell you not to. You got to go to the plate. So I'm in the on-deck circle. This is how I'm feeling. And as soon as I took the donut off my bat and took a step towards home plate, it was like this calm just descended. I mean, it was crazy, where all that nervousness went away, and it was like, all right, let's just go have an at-bat. And so I stepped in the batter's box, and my mind was a complete blank. It was crazy, and all I was thinking about was just get a good look at the ball. That's it. I mean, I'm up there, get a good look at the ball. And the at-bat was Feldman did a great job. He didn't make a bad pitch. I mean, he pitched really tough. He executed pitches. And the pitch I ended up hitting was like 93-mile-an-hour cutter, kind of on the inside corner, and I just basically fisted it back up the middle, and we ended up scoring a run. But I don't believe that God made me get a single, but I dang sure believe that He allowed me to be focused and concentrated and calm in what was the biggest moment of my entire life. And I mean, it's you really can't describe it when there's 50,000 people that are on their feet and they're screaming, and it's like everything is on you. It's without divine intervention, at least for me, I couldn't have stood up under that.
Wow, it is true though. The power of prayer. There is a piece.
It's for real.
It's real. It's for real.
Wait,
it is for real.
I got one crazy story that's totally popped into my head from that year. So I was working, and you guys might not give a shit about this, but I think it's kind of interesting. I was working in MLB. I've been working in baseball from, like I said, I got out of college. So I've been to every World Series, working every World Series. But my cousin, Andrew, like a younger brother to me, was like one of the first people in my family that was going to get married. And people kind of kept weddings away from October because a lot of my family worked in sports and stuff. And so they set the date, and they're like, we have to do it this date. It's towards when the World Series is. And I'm like, don't worry. Then the playoffs get set, and they're like, oh my God, it's the same thing. And I looked at the calendar. I go, it's impossible. I'll be home for the wedding. And they're like, why? And I'm like, the World Series this year would have to go 7 games and have a rain out for me to miss your wedding. So I will be there. And no shit, part of my language, we are in the truck. First of all, the rain out happens, and I'm like, no way. There's no way.
Yeah.
Fine. So game 6, though, or was it game 6, right?
Yeah.
We're sitting in the truck, and I'm like, there's no effing way. There's no way. It's over. Great. Bam. Ball off the wall. We'll see you again tomorrow night for the second time. Yeah. And I literally finished the show, went straight to the airport, and got on the first flight home. And I missed game 7 because I wanted to be at my cousin's wedding, be in the church with my family, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Well, game 7 was kind of blah compared to game. I mean, it was just anticlimactic,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Just let David Freese do his thing. Of all those teams, Berkey, you got a World Series title in 2011 with the Cardinals. All those unbelievable years with the Astros. What's the favorite team? What's the favorite team that you played on? Is there one team you look back and you go, man, I missed that team, or that was awesome?
Well, for sure, the 11 team is a great team, and but the other team that comes to mind is the 05 Astro team. I mean, the 2 World Series teams.
Right.
And I'm not saying that just because we went to the World Series and won it. And truly, the guys on that team, on both of those teams, you could literally close your eyes and throw a dart at a dartboard, and whatever name you hit, go on a 2-week vacation with them, and you would have a great. I mean, we just those 2 teams above all the ones that I ever played with. That was where the guys like truly loved each other and cared about each other beyond the professional. And so I've still got great relationships from both of those teams. Some of my best friends, Chris Burke and Andy Pettit from 05 Astro team. I mean, it's so many great guys like Adam Everett and Morgan Ensberg and guys like that Brad Osmus. I mean, not to mention Bagwell and Biggio and those guys. And then and with the Cardinals, I mean, Matt Holliday's still a great friend, and I keep up with Wayne. Just so many great guys. Gerald Laird, Nick Punto, Ryan Terrier, so many characters on that team. Funniest team for sure I ever played with was the 11 Cardinals. And we had some real comedians. So those 2 teams for sure are my favorite.
If you have Nick Punto on your team, you're going to probably be laughing a lot.
Oh, dude, this guy's unreal. I mean, but try to mix him in with like some of these other guys too. It was an absolute riot to come to the ballpark. I mean, it really was.
That's so great, dude. That's so great. I love looking back at those at that time at teams. You're like, no, it's some of the role player guys were some of the funniest guys, but we all, when you go to the World Series, you definitely mesh, and those are good years. All right, I just mentioned Steve Klein, bro. He owned me. It was so frustrating, right? It was so frustrating. Who owned you, and who did Lance Berkman own? Who did you want to see come up and say, oh, baby, it's 3 for 4 today, 3 for 3, no doubt?
Well, I mean, the guys that own me are like Ted Lilly and Randy Wolf. I mean, this guy, Randy Wolf, is like, when you said that about Steve Klein, he's the guy I thought about, because it's like I was just up there guessing. And if I guessed fastball, it would be like, okay, here's a breaking ball. But then I got into the whole like, okay, I'm thinking he's going to throw a fastball, but he knows I'm thinking that, so I'm going to throw a slider, and then he throw the fastball. Like, he knew that I knew that he knew. It's like the Princess Bride deal. I mean, I just could not get on the same page with him, and he owned me. So those 2 guys for sure. I had success against some guys like, actually Feldman was a guy that I had a lot of success against. I had a lot of success against Smoltz. I had a lot of success against Maddox. I mean, guys like that you would, if a right-handed pitcher had a hard time getting the ball in on me, then I had a pretty good shot of being successful against him. And so I'm thinking, who was the guy? One of the guys was it Sullivan? The side.
Oh yeah, Scott Sullivan. Yes, Sullivan.
Yeah, Scott Sullivan. I think I was like 10 for 11 against Sullivan. And Bagwell was like 0 for 15 against it. I mean, it's like Bagwell's kryptonite, and I mean, it looked like to me he was throwing me front toss. I mean, I was like,
well, what's so funny about that, Berkey, is like, if you go back and look at Lance Berkman versus Cincinnati Reds like career, and it comes out to like, I want to say it's right around the 170 games. It's so ridiculous. It's like 393 with 60 homers and like 100 an RBI a game. Dude, you used to crush the Reds. You used to crush them.
I mean, y'all would feature a collection of average right-handed pitcher, like just 90 to 92 slider change. I mean, there was never like a real hitting problem, and then
so true.
And then the ballpark is a good place to hit, just like kind of like Minute Maid. I mean, it's just a good place to hit. So.
Oh my gosh! So
I got
good.
the numbers, Sean. I got the numbers. Against
what
guys.
What are they?
314. This is a 728 plate appearances, so it's kind of like a season, a little more, right?
Yeah, it's more than
314, 52 homers, 144 RBIs, 124 walks, 3 triples, 39 doubles, 431 on base, 656 slugging, OPS 1.087.
Oh my God! If you played the Reds all the time, Bert, you'd have been the greatest player of all time. All time.
It started way back in Three Rivers. I mean,
Yeah.
But I mean, when you're running Pete Harnish and some of the no disrespect, but I mean, it's just like
Jimmy Haynes, Jose Acevedo, just like it was a track meet a lot of times. I'm like, oh man, I looked at our lineup. We got Dunn. We got Kearns, Griffey. You know, we're loaded. And I'm like, it's 12-10 again. It's freaking 9-7. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, man, you guys are licking your chops.
But guys, you know, and I probably shouldn't have even said that, but it's just, you know, some staffs, they have to be really fine with their stuff because they just, you know, it's not like they're going to overpower you, I guess is probably the better way to say it. And so sometimes, you know, you get into those spots where they make a few mistakes, and it seems like everybody has those teams that they excel against. And, you know, the Reds were certainly my team that I really enjoyed hitting against. And there were teams that, I mean, like I hated hitting against the Cubs. They even though, you know, they weren't great, except for a small period of time there in our, you know, when they were winning in like 03-ish. But
they always had good arms thoh. Kerry Wood,
they had some
Fryer, Zabrano. Yeah, they had some. Had some fuel. Yeah, they had some fuel. Berkey, I tell people all the time when people ask me, hey, did you play against him? What Hall of Famers did you play against? And, you know, I played with Barry Larkin. I played with Ken Griffey Jr. I played with Big Poppy. You know, there's a lot of guys, and all the guys you play against, you know. And so I always say, as a player, as a big league player, I know what they look like. And for me, you're a Hall of Famer. And there's a ton of guys around that would say, you know, by the way, congratulations on the Astros Hall of Fame. It really is a super big deal. But for me, I think Cooperstown, you know, that's where Lance Berkman should be. And I go back and now, you know, looking at up a few things. You rank second in baseball history, 300-plus plate appearances, OPS plus, only to Mickey Mantle for switch hitters, right? Fourth among switch hitters in home runs, right? And let me tell you who the switch hitters are. Mantle, Eddie Murray, Chipper Jones, right? The comps that you have to Edgar Martinez, you know, of you playing the outfield and playing first base. You know, if Edgar Martinez is a home run, is a Hall of Famer. Lance Berkman's a Hall of Famer. And I know, bro, dude, you're one of the most humble dudes that I've ever met in my life. But I'm telling you, I watched it. Like, you saw the numbers with the Reds. I watched it at a different level. You know what I mean? Than maybe the Cubs did. Can you just talk about that a little bit? Like what it would mean for you if Cooperstown maybe did happen for you with the Veterans Committee? Because for you to be still not on the ballot right now, I think is an absolute joke. But I think they do get it right eventually. Do you hope they go back and look at your numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one chance I would have would be there's a tendency in baseball to value things like OPS and you know those type of percentages rather than your hard counting stats like your home run numbers and your RBI numbers and all, you know, the more traditional way of looking and valuing hitters. So I mean I think my postseason and World Series performances and maybe like the OPS stuff, as those continue to be valued more, that would be where I might be able to convince some people that I'd be deserving of it. But I'm, you know, at the same time, I'm not holding my breath. I'm not, you know, I don't look at myself that way. But it would certainly be, you know, beyond my wildest dreams if that were to happen, and it would be, you know, you guys tear up and cry when they're getting inducted for a reason because it's just it would be monumental and something that would, you know, not validate, but would definitely be a feather. Just that. I guess, you know, you work your whole life, you do something and you want to be the best at it, and that's part of what drives you. And so it would be an acknowledgement or a recognition that, yeah, I mean, your career meant something, and you know, all the work that you put in paid off eventually. And you know, I felt like, especially towards the end of my career, the injuries really kept me from playing long enough to where I could have some of those counting stats that would make me more of a lock for the Hall of Fame, so to speak. So it's hard to think, man, if I hadn't got hurt, if I hadn't had 8 knee surgeries, if I hadn't, you know, like then
right.
play that what if game. So if you finally, you know, that would all go away if it did eventually happen. But at the same time, it's not going to greatly alter the course of my life going forward. Although I, you know, would love to see it happen.
Yeah, well, you look back though, 34 home runs shy of 400, 95 hits shy of 2,000. I also look at one thing too. When you go back and you look at your Astros days, I mean, ridiculous numbers from 2009 to 2010, which is from 2000 to 2009, which is 10 years. You hit 300 with 413 on base percentage and a 559 slug which is elite with 31 homers and 103 RBIs, 148 OPS plus. And I know those numbers do matter, bro, but I'm going to keep preaching it. I know Brian Kenny at the network, who is the guy that kind of breaks down the numbers, and you get frustrated, Brian, sometimes. But I know whenever we talk about you, he says, yeah, Lance Berkman's a Hall of Famer. So I just hope that train keeps rolling forward. And, I hope people see, the numbers that you did put up. Dude, so this last segment is the furthest thing from Cooperstown. It's called 9 and 90 that we do.
Okay.
And Chinch, why don't you tell Lance what it is?
Well, let's have Marty Brenneman tell Lance what it is first.
Okay.
Hall of Fame baseball broadcaster Marty Brenneman here. It's time for 9 in 90, the most ridiculous segment in all of sports.
That's right. So, very simply put, it's this or that questions, Lance, and they're absolutely stupid. So answer them as stupidly as you like. I'll ask Casey first. He'll give a quick answer, and then you just pick it up right off of him. Okay?
So
ready for
we're
this?
answering questions, and they're stupid questions that we're answering.
Basically.
They're just fun. Yeah.
I'll pick it up as we go.
Fun and weird. Okay. All right. First one, Sean. In the Tom and Jerry cartoon, who did you root for, Tom or Jerry?
I kind of rooted for Jerry. I was just frustrated that Tom was, this big old cat doing his thing. So Jerry.
Okay.
I see. I'm just the opposite. Like I like to see Tom win a few of those battles because he rarely did.
I agree.
Of course, I guess the one thing to think about there is if Tom does win, the show's over.
Yeah, that's true.
So Jerry had to win.
Okay. See, you're very good at this game already. Perfect. All right, Sean. Eliminate one diva. Madonna, Cher, or Celine Dion?
I'm gonna have to say Cher.
Okay.
Because she's a little older for me, so I like Madonna, and Celine Dion has a great voice, so Cher.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. Yeah, Cher for sure.
Yeah, Cher. You're out, Cher. Okay, you're out to dinner at a restaurant. Are you crushing table bread and appetizers or saving room for dessert, Sean?
I'm saving. Nowadays, back in the day, I was crushing the bread with the olive oil dip and just licking the plate. Now I'm more saving room for dessert.
Can I answer both? Because I routinely do both. Bread, and I have dessert. And my wife gives me a hard time because I've kind of gotten into this deal where I eat 3 breakfasts. I have different breakfasts. It's supposed to be the most important meal of the day, so I want to make sure I get it in.
Yeah, boy. Perfect. All right, great. All right, Sean, would you rather have the smallest hands in the world or the biggest feet in the world?
Does that mean I have big hands?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't go too deep into these questions.
I'd rather have the biggest feet because that means I'm probably a big dude.
Okay. Lance?
Yeah, I'd probably go with the feet also, just because if you have the smallest hands in the world, you're going to have a hard time even getting by, in life.
That's fair point.
Let alone hitting a baseball. You're not going to hit a baseball.
You're not playing baseball.
Right, I won't be able to hold my fork for my free breakfast.
Yeah, that's right. All right, you ready? Rank these Lances from worst to best. Lance Armstrong, Lance Bass, and pro wrestler Lance Storm.
Oh, from worst to best?
Yes.
I'd have to say Lance Bass is 3, Lance Armstrong 2, and I'm a big wrestling fan. I kind of like Lance Storm. Okay. I'm sure Berkey doesn't even know who Lance Storm is.
I don't. That's why I'm going to put him third.
Good.
The other 2 guys, I don't particularly care for, but at least I've heard of them, so they'll be high for second.
Okay, perfect.
I'll put myself in the number 1.
There you go. All right, great. This is going well. All right, what smell is the worst? Wet dog, cat piss, or horse poop?
Ooh, I'd have to say cat piss is deadly.
You're familiar with it.
I'm familiar with cat piss. I don't know if I've ever told you that story, Berkey, about my arbitration hearing. If not, I'll have to tell you that. I'll tell you that. But cat piss, it lasts for years, guys, and you just can't get rid of it.
Yeah, I have to say cat piss for sure. Wet dog, not pleasant, but I like dogs, and so kind of put up with that. And horse poop's actually not that bad because it reminds me of being outside and whatnot. The thing about those, you got to remember, a horse is a vegetarian, so their poop is a lot more pleasant, because it's just grass and whatnot. And
Well done. Well done. Perfect. Okay, 3 more quick ones. You're locked in an empty room with nothing but one song playing for 24 hours. Which of these 3 songs would you choose to listen to if you had to listen to one? Row, row, row your boat, 99 bottles of beer on a wall, or Baby Shark, 24 hours straight.
Oh my God. You know what? I think row, row, row your boat. Like I could just get into a rhythm, I think, and just kind of grind it out and just keep rolling.
I think I'd have to go like 99 bottles of beer, just because it gives you something to think about. Like, sit down. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not mine. Like, you got to think, okay, 97, 96,
Yeah.
The other 2 can just be mindless.
That's true.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's so true.
Okay. Last one here. This is a big one. We are at the World Arm Wrestling Championships.
Over the top, baby.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
I turned my hat around.
Fine.
Like
there we go. This is good. This is working out. We're at the final table. Sean Casey versus Lance Berkman for all the marbles. Who wins and why?
Are we lefty or righty?
Oh, that's a great question. I didn't think about that.
If
Maybe you have to do it for...
If we're righty, I grab Lance and I just go over the top like this. Guy tries to, the starter, and I just boom, and I lock in his forearm right here, just and put him down. Now, if we're lefty, he's lefty. I know I'm gonna get him. I had this shoulder blown out in 2002. It's over, Johnny, right from the gates.
Well, let me tell you something. My right shoulder needs surgery, so I would lose right-handed, and I think I have a torn UCL on my left elbow, so I'd lose that one too.
Oh, jeez.
I'd be over too.
Oh, God. All right, that's it. You did it. Thank you. That was great.
My God, it's so good. Oh my God, Berkey, you made it through, bro. I can't thank you enough for coming on, dude. I just cherish it, cherish the stories, cherish our friendship, and just want to tell you thanks again, dude. Hopefully, maybe we could do Lance Berkman Part 2, because I know we got so many more places to go. We could go.
Oh, dude, we haven't even scratched the surface of the good stories.
Gotta do it again. Gotta be our first return guest. Thank you, man.
Tell Kara and the girls I said hi, brother.
I will. All right, buddy.
Okay,
Thank you.
Man. Take care of
Thanks
yourself.
again.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Case, man. That was awesome, dude.
He's the best. He is the best.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So cool. It's so
Dude.
funny, but so smart. I love all the baseball stories, but then when he gets into, God, he's so funny too. So good.
Well, one of the things, Chinch, I think first off, one of the best personalities this game's ever seen. One of the funniest dudes you'll ever meet. There's a reason why wherever Lance Berkman went, he won. You know what I mean? Like, he just was such a great guy, such a strong man of faith. He touched on a little bit, and I think that's a big part of his life and why he is such an amazing man. But I just think talking and hitting with him, and bro, I've talked to a lot of guys about hitting, some of the greatest hitters of all time.
Yeah.
You get with Lance Berkman, it's a little bit of a different conversation, because you're like, wow, this is impressive. Just the way he thinks about it, the way he coaches these kids, the way, I love how he said, you can't coach one swing.
Right.
That
was cool.
It's like you were talking about Dante Bichette. You don't just teach the forehand winner in tennis. They're going to hit you backhands all day. Mm-hmm. Lance Berkman, I love what he was saying. I got to look at my hitter and say, hey, this guy has a little bit more of an uppercut swing. This guy swings too far down. Let's find a level swing or something in between. So, I thought, did you enjoy that take on him talking hitting?
Oh, it was unbelievable, and it really was inspiring and exciting for me, because the game, it has its ebbs and flows of how they coach it and how it's taught and what's good and what's not good. And it was really awesome. I loved hearing him say, a lot of us old school guys that played in the pros, we're coaching now. So we can explain, the way we think it should be, right, wrong, or indifferent. But I love that idea and that concept that, God, oh my God, if you're a high school kid right now and you want to play college baseball and have thought of going to the pros, how are you not knocking down the door to play for Lance Berkman?
Oh, dude, I swear to God, I was thinking to myself, man, if he was at Houston Baptist last year, I'd have sent my kids there.
Yeah, totally, right? So
you know
cool.
what I mean? Was another thing that was really cool, bro, was A couple things I wrote down. You know, when I asked him about the culture he's trying to form at Houston Baptist, he said we believe in the acronym WAR. Work hard, aggressively go after your craft. Like that means the opposite of fear. Let's not be scared. And if we're aggressive and we have failure, we can live with that. I love that. And the R was responsibility. Take responsibility for yourself. How you sleep, how you eat, right? How you go about your business, how you think, your mindset, all that stuff. What kind of teammate are you? I just love that responsibility factor. I know that was big for me in my life, still big for me now in my life of take accountability, take responsibility for everything that you do. And I thought Lance passing that on to these college kids, you know, it really is priceless. Yeah. A couple other things I thought that I loved, the Gratitude.
Yeah.
You know, cool. I love that. Every morning when I get up, I do a gratitude journal, right? I love it.
I know that. That's
5 things every day. It's wonderful. And man, I tell you what, there's something about the emotion, the flow, the energy of gratitude is so big. I love how he has that Gratitude, you know, for his players. And I just think gratitude is something that I know in my life is such a huge thing that every day, that's the one thing I want to get into right away. Let me get into gratitude, you know? So I thought that was cool. He talked about Gratitude. Feel versus real. As big league players, sometimes what we feel is not what necessarily is real. And, you know, Lance talking about sometimes he was saying hitting down on the ball, man. He felt like he was really coming down on the baseball. But when he watched the video, you could see he had more of a level swing. I just love that feel versus real. The coward story he told.
Oh my God!
Graham. I mean, come on, dude.
So good.
Coach Graham just seemed like what an awesome guy to play for. Old school as they come.
Yep.
You know, old school as they come.
Yeah.
And the hitting drill that we talked about.
Sick.
I had talked to Lance a couple years ago at Pro Athletes Outreach, this conference, and he was talking to me about, you know, hey, one of the drills that I did all the time was I'd put the tee up, place a ball about 15 feet away, and try and hit rockets off the ball down into the ground. I'm like, wow,
cool.
Just exaggerate the feel. So, man, what a great conversation. I could have talked to Lance. We could have talked for the next another hour.
Yeah. No, oh my God. Yeah, we could have kept talking. And the last thing I'll say is, which is really cool to me, is, and you know, we prepped this for like a week going into each one of these, and you kept going back to, you know, we're just very similar. We have a lot of parallels in our lives and our careers and whatever. And you were talking about in the beginning about, you know, how your struggles through high school to get to a college team, and, you know, nobody looking at you guys like because you couldn't run as fast or whatever. But those things you just mentioned, all the stuff you just rattled off, and for the people at home, Sean is not lying. It's very similar as far as being a positive person and a positive influence on the people in your life. A lot of those things that he said, those acronyms or whatever you want to call them, like you give me those, you know, when I'm down and I'm talking to Sean, he'll give me one of those things and I'm like, oh wow, yeah, that's cool. So it's crazy how you guys never played together, but you were like kindred spirits, and it's very, very cool that you guys became friends and are such good friends now. So I'm glad we got to do that. I'm glad you got to hang out with him for as long as we did.
Yeah, no, it is amazing looking back that, you know, that I think it's very real. I really believe the energy that you put out in your life comes back to you. And when people come into your life, you know, there's a reason. And Lance, you know, at that stage of our careers, we had a lot of the same personality. We really did become buddies. Although he was in Houston and I was in Cincinnati, I'd go to his house and sit. And when we go play the Astros, he was there for my 30th surprise party. Wow. The Astros just happened to be in town, and you know, he came in for the barbecue and stuff. So grateful for Lance. So grateful for, you know, that a guy like him that you run across that, like I said, was never my teammate, only at All-Star games. Yeah. But we do have a friendship to this day in 2021, and it's just really, really cool, man.
So great, man. Well, I'm grateful for you, Sean. That was awesome.
Yeah, Chinch, you're the best, brother. You are the best, man. I'm grateful for you, and I'm so thankful and looking forward to. And I just want to say too, really quick, I know we say it, but I'm very, very grateful, you know, for all the people that continue to follow us, that continue to you know, to download us on Apple or Spotify or wherever, Audible, wherever you guys get your podcasts, and you know, nofilter.net and YouTube and all that stuff. We see the numbers going up. We see you guys out there. Please, you know, please hit us up on Twitter or or Instagram, especially, I'm at the mayor's office. Chinch is at Chinch4.
Yep.
At the mayor's office on Instagram. I'm at the mayor's office MLB. Tell us what you want to see more of, maybe, and tell us what guests you're thinking about getting, because Chinch and I talk all the time. We're like, who are we going after next? Cooperstown? Are we going to Hollywood?
Yeah.
Are we going to Hollywood? Who are we going for? So we're having a good time trying to figure out the next guests are. So if you have any opinions, let us know. We appreciate it.
Definitely. All right, buddy. Love you, man.
Okay, brother. Love you too, Chinch. I'll talk to you, man. Yep.